The moment Lena Hart's water broke in the cardiac wing of Mercy General, her carefully constructed lie shattered with it. For 7 months, she'd hidden her pregnancy beneath oversized scrubs, planning her escape from the man who could never know about their child. But as contractions ripped through her body and her coworker Sophie rushed her to labor and delivery, Lena's worst nightmare materialized. Adrien Moretti, the crime boss she'd spent months running from, walked through the door with the calm certainty of someone who'd known exactly where she was all along. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and comment your city so I can see how far this story reaches. The fluorescent lights of Mercy General's cardiac wing hummed their eternal song at 2:47 a.m., casting everything in that particular shade of institutional white that made even the living look half dead. Lena Hart had learned to love these quiet hours, when the chaos of the day shift faded into something manageable. Just her, the monitors, and patients who were usually too sedated or too tired to ask questions she didn't want to answer. She moved through room 412 with practiced efficiency, checking Mr. Peterson's vitals with hands that had steadied 1,000 racing hearts. Her oversized navy scrubs, 3 sizes too big and carefully selected, hung loose around her frame, hiding what 7 months of careful deception had kept secret. The fabric shifted as she reached for the blood pressure cuff, and she felt it, a tightening across her abdomen that made her pause mid-motion. Not now. Please, not now. The sensation passed after 10 seconds. Braxton Hicks, she told herself. Practice contractions. Perfectly normal at 31 weeks. Nothing to worry about. She had 9 weeks left. 9 weeks to finish her plan, to save enough money, to disappear completely before... Lena? Mr. Peterson's watery blue eyes focused on her with surprising clarity for a man who'd had a triple bypass 6 hours ago. You all right, sweetheart? You look pale. She manufactured her professional smile, the one that had gotten her through nursing school and 3 years at Mercy General, and 7 months of the most elaborate lie of her life. I'm fine, Mr. Peterson. Just a long shift. How's your pain level? 3 out of 10. Not bad for someone who had his chest cracked open like a walnut. He attempted a weak grin. You sure you're okay? You've been good to me. If something's wrong... Everything's fine, Lena interrupted, her voice firmer than she intended. She gentled her tone. Really, now get some rest. Dr. Patel will be by in the morning. She escaped into the hallway before he could press further. The corridor stretched before her in both directions, empty except for the distant sound of someone's IV pump beeping an alert. Lena pressed her back against the cool wall, one hand unconsciously moving to her stomach beneath the concealing fabric of her scrubs. Survive 2 more months, she reminded herself. Just 2 more months. Then Vegas, the baby, Adrien Moretti, all of it becomes someone else's story. The name alone made her breath catch. Even thinking it felt dangerous, like summoning something dark and inevitable. Adrien Moretti, the man who'd ruined her life in the span of one perfect, terrible night 8 months ago. She could still remember every detail with the kind of clarity reserved for car accidents and natural disasters. The medical conference in Las Vegas that her hospital had paid for. The hotel bar where she'd gone to decompress after a particularly brutal panel on cardiac trauma protocols. The stranger with storm gray eyes who'd bought her a drink and asked intelligent questions about her work. The conversation that had flowed like water, natural and effortless. The first easy thing in her life since her engagement had imploded 6 months prior. She'd known it was reckless. She'd known it was stupid. She'd done it anyway, gone up to his suite, let him touch her in ways that made her forget her own name, lost herself in pleasure that felt like rebellion and freedom, and everything. Her careful, controlled life had been missing. She'd left at dawn without waking him. No names exchanged, no numbers swapped, just a perfect, anonymous mistake she could tuck away and never think about again. Except 3 weeks later, when the test came back positive. And 4 weeks after that, when she'd been scrolling through news articles during a lunch break and seen his face. Adrien Moretti, alleged crime boss, expands territory into West Coast operations. The photograph had stolen her breath. Same storm gray eyes, same sharp jawline, same hands that had mapped every inch of her skin. But the caption beneath the photo had transformed her perfect mistake into something exponentially more dangerous. Words like organized crime and federal investigation and suspected ties to international trafficking had rewritten their entire encounter. Lena had thrown up in the staff bathroom. Then she'd made her plan. No one could know. Not her parents in Ohio, not her coworkers. Definitely not Adrien Moretti, who operated in a world where children were leverage and complications were eliminated with terrifying efficiency. She would hide the pregnancy, save every penny from her paychecks, and the moment the baby was born, she would vanish. A new city, a new name, a new life where crime bosses couldn't reach her. It had worked for 7 months. 7 months of oversized scrubs and careful angles and claiming she'd gained weight from stress eating. 7 months of working brutal doubles to pad her escape fund. 7 months of... The contraction hit like a fist closing around her entire midsection. Lena gasped, one hand flying out to brace against the wall. This wasn't Braxton Hicks. This was different, deeper, more insistent. Pain radiated from her lower back around to her abdomen in a vice grip that made her vision blur at the edges. Breathe, she whispered to herself. Just breathe through it. The contraction peaked and held for 15 seconds. She counted them, nurses training overriding panic, before slowly releasing its grip. Lena sagged against the wall, her scrub top now damp with sweat. False labor. It had to be false labor. Stress could trigger it. She'd been on her feet for 11 hours straight. Her body was just protesting. She had 9 weeks left. The baby wasn't coming yet. The baby couldn't come yet. Lena? She looked up to find Sophie Chen standing 5 feet away, her best friend's dark eyes sharp with concern. Sophie worked the same cardiac wing, had started at Mercy General the same week as Lena, and possessed a bullshit detector that had survived 3 years of nursing school and countless hospital politics. Hey! Lena straightened, willing her face into neutral lines. What's up? Sophie's gaze traveled slowly from Lena's face to her white-knuckled grip on the wall rail. You look like you're about to pass out. What's wrong? Nothing, just tired. Lena. I'm fine, Soph, really. Sophie closed the distance between them in 3 strides. You've been fine for 7 months. You've been fine through weight gain you won't talk about, through refusing to go out for drinks, through wearing scrubs that could fit 2 of you. Her voice dropped. I'm not stupid, and I'm not blind. Lena's throat tightened. Sophie, how far along are you? The question landed like a bomb in the quiet hallway. For a moment, Lena considered maintaining the lie, but another contraction was building. She could feel it gathering in her lower back, and suddenly the weight of 7 months of secrets felt impossibly heavy. 31 weeks, she whispered. Sophie's eyes widened. 31, Jesus Christ, Lena. You've been working 12-hour shifts on a cardiac unit while 7 months pregnant? I needed the money. For what? Is someone after you? Are you in trouble? Yes, Lena thought. Yes, I'm in so much trouble you can't even imagine. She opened her mouth to answer, but the second contraction hit with the force of a freight train. This time, Lena couldn't suppress the small sound of pain that escaped her throat. She doubled over, one hand pressed to her stomach beneath the concealing scrubs. Sophie's hand was on her shoulder immediately. Lena? Lena, talk to me. Contraction, Lena managed through gritted teeth. But it's fine, it's just false labor, stress. I'll drink some water and... Warm liquid suddenly flooded down her legs, soaking through her scrub pants in a rush that left no room for denial. Your water just broke, Sophie said, her voice shifting into the calm, clinical tone she used in emergencies. We need to get you to labor and delivery right now. No. Lena grabbed Sophie's arm, panic overriding pain. No hospitals, no paperwork. No, you're in a hospital and your baby is coming 9 weeks early. We don't have a choice. Sophie was already pulling out her phone. I'm calling for a wheelchair. Sophie, please. Desperation made Lena's voice crack. You don't understand. I can't. There are things, people. I need to leave the city first. I need to... Another contraction, stronger than the last, cut off her words. Lena felt her knees buckle. Sophie caught her, surprisingly strong for someone who barely topped 5 feet. The only place you're going is upstairs, Sophie said firmly. Everything else can wait. It can't. Lena was crying now, terror mixing with pain. The baby's father, he can't know. If there's any record, any paperwork with my name, is he dangerous? The question stopped Lena cold. Images flashed through her mind. Adrien Moretti's face in that news article. The words, suspected criminal enterprise. The calm, lethal intelligence in his eyes that should have warned her away but had instead drawn her in like a moth to flame. Yes, she whispered. Sophie's expression hardened. Then we'll use a Jane Doe admission until we figure this out. But right now your baby is coming, and if it's preterm, we need to be ready, okay? The wheelchair arrived. Sophie must have texted someone. Lena let herself be lowered into it, too overwhelmed by pain and fear to protest further. As Sophie wheeled her toward the elevators, Lena closed her eyes and tried to breathe through the mounting contractions. This isn't happening. This isn't how it was supposed to go. I had a plan. I had 2 more months. The elevator doors opened with a cheerful ding that felt wildly inappropriate. Sophie pushed her inside, jabbing the button for the 4th floor, where labor and delivery occupied the entire west wing. "Who's the father?" Sophie asked quietly as the elevator began to rise. "You don't have to tell me his name. But does he know about the baby?" "No, and he can't, ever." Lena met her friend's eyes. "Promise me, Sophie, whatever happens, you won't put his name on any paperwork. You won't try to contact him. Promise me." Sophie's jaw tightened, but she nodded. "I promise." "But Lena, if this man is as dangerous as you're implying, how did you end up pregnant with his child?" "I didn't know." The words came out flat, defeated. "When we met, I thought he was just a businessman in town for a conference. I didn't know until after—" She broke off as another contraction built. "I saw his face on the news. By then it was too late." The elevator dinged again. 4th floor. The doors slid open to reveal the bright, bustling corridor of labor and delivery. Even at 3 a.m., the unit hummed with activity. Nurses moving between rooms, monitors beeping, the occasional cry of a newborn breaking through the controlled chaos. Sophie wheeled her past the main desk, catching the eye of the charge nurse. "I need a room. Friend of mine. Water broke, contractions every 3 minutes, 31 weeks." The charge nurse, Marianne, Lena recognized her from hospital training seminars, looked down and did a double take. "Lena? Oh, honey, why didn't you tell us?" "It's complicated." Lena gripped the wheelchair arms as another wave of pain hit. "Can we skip the interrogation and just—" "Room 7 is open," Marianne interrupted, already moving. "Sophie, get her changed and on monitors. I'll page the OB on call." She paused, studying Lena's face. "Do you have a birth plan? Someone you want us to call?" "No one," Lena said quickly. "No calls, no contacts. Just me." Marianne's expression flickered, disapproval mixed with concern, but she nodded. "Your choice. Let's focus on the baby." Call room 7 was standard labor and delivery fare, monitoring equipment, a bed that could transform into various positions, pale blue walls meant to be soothing. Sophie helped Lena change into a hospital gown, her friend's hands gentle as she navigated around Lena's swollen belly. "Jesus," Sophie breathed, seeing Lena's pregnant form fully revealed for the first time. "How did you hide this?" "Practice, baggy clothes, avoiding everyone." Lena eased herself onto the bed with Sophie's help. "I got good at being invisible." "Too good." Sophie began attaching the fetal monitor, her movements efficient and practiced. "Okay, let's see what we're dealing with." The monitor beeped to life. Within seconds, the rapid flutter of a heartbeat filled the room, fast, strong, unmistakably alive. Lena felt tears prick her eyes despite everything. Her baby. Her son. The secret she'd carried for 7 months, now announcing himself to the world whether she was ready or not. "Heart rate looks good," Sophie said, adjusting the second monitor around Lena's abdomen to track contractions. 145, nice and strong. She met Lena's eyes. "You know, for someone who's been hiding a pregnancy and planning to vanish, you grew a pretty healthy baby." "I took my prenatals, stayed hydrated, ate right." Lena's voice wavered. "I wanted to keep him safe, even if I couldn't—" Another contraction cut her off. She gripped the bed rails, riding the wave of pain that seemed to stretch on forever. Sophie checked her watch. 2.5 minutes since the last one. "They're getting closer." She squeezed Lena's hand. "I'm going to check your cervix, okay? Need to see how far along you are." The exam was uncomfortable and humiliating and necessary. Sophie's face remained professionally neutral throughout, but Lena saw the flicker of concern in her eyes. 6 centimeters, Sophie announced, snapping off her gloves. You're in active labor, hun. This baby is coming tonight. Panic surged through Lena's chest. It's too early. He's only 31 weeks. He needs more time. 31 weekers do well, Sophie said firmly. We have an excellent NICU here. The on-call OB is Dr. Martinez. She's fantastic with preterm births. You're in the best possible place. I'm in the worst possible place. Lena struggled to sit up, her mind racing. Sophie, I can't be here. My name is in the system now. If anyone checks, if he finds out, who is this guy? Sophie demanded. What kind of man are you so terrified of that you'd rather give birth in hiding than risk him knowing? Lena opened her mouth to answer, but the door to room 7 opened. Dr. Martinez walked in, 50-something, graying hair pulled back in a neat bun, the kind of calm competence that came from 20 years of catching babies. All right, let's see what we have here. She washed her hands, reviewing the monitor strips. Lena Hart, 31 weeks, spontaneous rupture of membranes. How are you feeling? Terrified, Lena admitted. That's normal. Dr. Martinez smiled warmly. First baby? Yes. Any complications during the pregnancy? Gestational diabetes? High blood pressure? No, everything was normal. Lena gasped as another contraction peaked. I had prenatal care. Different clinic, paid cash. They have my records under... She stopped herself. Giving false names to medical professionals was probably illegal. Dr. Martinez's expression sharpened. Under what name? Does it matter? Sophie interjected. She's here now. The baby is coming. Can we focus on that? The doctor held Sophie's gaze for a long moment, then nodded. Fair enough. Let me do an exam. The next several minutes passed in a blur of clinical assessments and mounting pain. Lena tried to focus on breathing, on staying calm, on anything except the reality that her carefully constructed plan was disintegrating with each contraction. 7 centimeters, Dr. Martinez announced. Progressing quickly. We'll need to notify the NICU team. With a 31-weeker, we want pediatrics in the room at delivery. She made notes on her tablet. Lena, is there anyone you want us to call? The baby's father? Your family? No. The word came out harder than Lena intended. No one. I'm doing this alone. Dr. Martinez's expression softened. You don't have to. Whatever situation you're in, you can't help with my situation, Lena interrupted. No one can. Just help me deliver this baby safely. That's all I need. The doctor studied her for a long moment, then nodded. All right, Sophie, stay with her. I'm going to prep the team. She paused at the door. Lena, you're not the first woman to walk into this hospital with secrets, and you won't be the last. Whatever you're running from, it stops at this door. In here, you're just a mother having a baby. Understood? Lena felt her throat tighten. Thank you. After Dr. Martinez left, Sophie pulled a chair close to the bed and took Lena's hand. She's right, you know. Whatever happens, we'll handle it. You're not alone. You don't know what you're saying. Lena squeezed her friend's hand as another contraction built. The baby's father, he's not just dangerous, he's powerful. The kind of powerful that makes people disappear. If he knew about this child... She couldn't finish the sentence. The possibilities were too terrible. Then we make sure he doesn't find out, Sophie said simply. No name on the birth certificate. No father listed. Nothing that ties this baby to anyone except you. It's not that simple. People like him, they have resources, connections. If they want to find someone, Lena, Sophie's voice cut through her rising panic. Right now, the only thing that matters is getting through this delivery. Everything else, the running, the hiding, the fear, it can wait a few hours. Can you do that? Can you just focus on right now? Lena wanted to say no. Wanted to explain that focusing on right now was impossible when the future loomed like a noose tightening around her neck. But another contraction hit, and all she could do was grip Sophie's hand and breathe through the pain that was rewriting her entire body. Hours blurred together, the room grew brighter as dawn approached, the darkness outside the window gradually giving way to the gray pre-dawn light of a hospital awakening. Lena lost track of time between contractions, between checks of her cervix, between Sophie's murmured encouragements and Dr. Martinez's calm assessments. At some point, the epidural arrived. Lena had debated it during her secret prenatal appointments. She'd wanted to stay sharp, stay aware, but the pain overrode her paranoia. The anesthesiologist was gentle, the relief almost immediate. The contractions continued but became manageable, reduced to pressure instead of agony. "Better?" Sophie asked, wiping Lena's forehead with a cool cloth. "Better." Lena's voice came out drowsy. "How much longer?" "You're at 9 centimeters. Soon." "I'm not ready." "No one ever is, huh?" Sophie smiled. "But you're going to be amazing. I know it." Lena closed her eyes, trying to find some center of calm in the chaos. Instead, her mind drifted back to that night in Vegas, to Adrien Moretti's hands on her skin, to the way he'd looked at her like she was the only person in the room worth seeing, to the dangerous, intoxicating feeling of being wanted by someone who operated outside every rule she'd ever followed. She'd Googled him obsessively after discovering his identity, read every article, every speculation about his operations. Adrien Moretti had built an empire from his family's legacy, legitimate businesses that served as fronts for less legitimate enterprises. Money laundering, protection rackets, trafficking routes that spanned 3 continents. The FBI had been investigating him for years but couldn't make anything stick. He was too careful, too insulated, too ruthlessly intelligent. And she'd let him touch her, let him inside her body, let him create the child now fighting to be born 9 weeks too early. "Lena?" Dr. Martinez's voice pulled her back to the present. "You're at 10 centimeters. It's time to push." Terror and relief flooded through her in equal measure. "Now?" "Now." The doctor positioned herself at the foot of the bed. "Sophie, support her shoulders. Lena, when the next contraction comes, I need you to push. Long, steady pressure. Can you do that?" Lena nodded, her mouth too dry for words. The NICU team had assembled in the corner, 2 nurses and a neonatologist, ready to assess the baby the moment he arrived. Sophie moved to her side, one hand on Lena's shoulder, the other holding her hand. "You've got this," Sophie whispered. "I'm right here." The next contraction built, and Lena bore down with everything she had. The epidural dulled the pain, but she could still feel the immense pressure, the sensation of her body opening to let her son enter the world. "Good, doctor," Martinez encouraged. "Again, big push." Lena pushed, and pushed, and pushed until her vision blurred and sweat poured down her face, and Sophie's voice became the only anchor keeping her tethered to reality. "The head's crowning," Dr. Martinez announced. "One more big push, and we'll have him." Lena gathered every ounce of strength left in her exhausted body and pushed. She felt the moment her son left her body, a sudden absence, a relief so profound it bordered on loss. Then a sound pierced the room, a thin, angry cry that meant alive, meant breathing, meant real. "It's a boy," Dr. Martinez said, her voice warm with satisfaction. "A beautiful boy." The NICU team swarmed immediately, whisking the baby to the warming table for assessment. Lena tried to see him through the cluster of medical professionals, catching only glimpses. Impossibly tiny limbs, a shock of dark hair, skin that looked almost translucent in the harsh lights. "Is he okay?" Her voice cracked. "Please, is he—" "Breathing on his own," the neonatologist called out. 4 pounds, 2 ounces. APGAR of 7 at 1 minute. Could be worse for 31 weeks. Relief made Lena's entire body sag against the bed. Breathing on his own. That was good. That was better than she'd dared hope. "We're going to take him to the NICU for observation," the neonatologist continued, already preparing the transport isolette. "Standard protocol for preemies, but he looks strong, Mom. You did good." "Can I—" Lena reached out one trembling hand. "Can I see him? Just for a second?" The team exchanged glances, then carefully brought the tiny bundle to her bedside. Lena's breath caught. Her son, lay wrapped in hospital blankets, his eyes scrunched shut, his miniature fists waving in apparent outrage at the indignity of being born. But it was his face that made Lena's heart stop. Even premature, even impossibly small, she could see it, the sharp jawline, the shape of his eyes, the unmistakable stamp of genetics that proclaimed exactly who had fathered this child. He looked like Adrien Moretti. Not identical, he was too young, too unformed for that. But the resemblance was there, undeniable, a truth written in bone structure and DNA that no amount of running could erase. "Hi," Lena whispered, her vision blurring with tears. "Hi, baby. I'm your mom. Her voice broke. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for all of it." "We need to take him now," one of the NICU nurses said gently. "You can visit as soon as you're recovered from delivery." They wheeled him away before Lena could protest. She watched the isolette disappear through the door, taking her son to a place of monitors and incubators and constant surveillance. Safe, but separate. Protected, but not with her. "He's beautiful," Sophie said softly. "Lena, he's perfect. He looks like his father." Lena closed her eyes against the tears. "Anyone who knows Adrien Moretti would see it. The resemblance it's too obvious." "Then it's good you're leaving the city," Sophie said. "By the time this baby is old enough for the resemblance to matter, you'll be long gone." Lena wanted to believe that. Wanted to believe she could still salvage her plan, could still disappear with her son before Adrien's network pieced together what had happened. "You did beautifully, Lena. Rest now." "You did beautifully, Lena. Rest now. We'll monitor you for a few hours, then move you to a postpartum room." "When can I see him again?" "Once you're settled. The NICU has visiting hours, but for mothers, it's pretty much any time." She made a final note on her tablet. "Have you thought about a name?" Lena opened her mouth to answer, but the door to room 7 opened again. She expected another nurse. A hospital administrator, maybe, come to process paperwork. What she got instead made her heart stop completely. Adrien Moretti walked into the room like he owned it. He looked exactly as she remembered. 6 feet of lethal grace wrapped in an immaculately tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than her car. Storm gray eyes swept the room in one assessing glance before settling on her face with laser focus. His dark hair was shorter than it had been in Vegas, his jaw shadowed with carefully maintained stubble. He moved with the kind of confidence that came from never, ever being told no. Behind him, 2 men in equally expensive suits took positions flanking the door. Security, enforcers. The kind of men whose job descriptions included words like eliminate threats. Yet every person in the room froze. "What?" Dr. Martinez started. "Out," Adrien said quietly. His voice was exactly as Lena remembered, smooth, cultured, with an edge of steel that made it clear this wasn't a request. "Everyone except Lena. Now." "This is a hospital," Dr. Martinez said sharply. "You can't just—" Adrien pulled something from his jacket, Lena couldn't see what, and handed it to the doctor. "Doctor." Martinez's expression went from angry to shocked to carefully neutral in the span of 3 seconds. "Of course," she said, her voice suddenly professional and distant. "We'll give you some privacy." She gestured to Sophie and the remaining nurse. "Let's step outside." "No." Lena's voice came out as a croak. "Sophie, don't." But Sophie was already being ushered toward the door, her face a mask of confusion and concern. She threw one last look over her shoulder. "Do you want me to call security?" But Lena could only shake her head. What would security do against a man who could walk into a hospital and clear a room with a single word? The door clicked shut, leaving Lena alone with Adrien Moretti and the wreckage of every plan she'd ever made. He stood at the foot of her bed, his hands in his pockets, his expression unreadable. "Hello, Lena." She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything except stare at the man who could not, be standing in this room. "How," she started. "Did I find you?" Adrien moved closer, his steps silent on the linoleum floor. "I've known where you were for 6 months, from the moment you started showing and had to change your buying patterns, from the moment you applied for extended leave starting in March. From the moment you started researching cities in the Midwest with good schools and low crime rates." He stopped beside her bed, looking down at her with those impossibly gray eyes. "Did you really think you could hide from me?" Terror crystallized into something sharp and cold in Lena's chest. "You've been watching me for months." "Protecting you," he corrected. "There's a difference." "Protecting," Lena's voice rose. "You've been stalking me, invading my privacy, tracking my every move." "You're carrying my child," Adrien interrupted, his voice still calm but with a note of steel beneath it. "What exactly did you expect me to do?" Let you disappear? Let my son be raised by a woman who thinks running and hiding is a viable life plan? He's not, but the lie died in her throat. Of course Adrien knew. Of course he'd had DNA tested somehow, maybe from a discarded coffee cup or a strand of hair. Men like him didn't leave things to chance. This baby is mine. You have no rights. I have every right. Adrien's hand moved, and suddenly he was holding a folder. He opened it, revealing papers covered in legal terminology. This is a petition for paternity establishment, to be filed the moment I have a DNA sample from our son. I have 3 different law firms on retainer. I have connections in family court that will ensure any custody battle goes in my favor. And I have the resources to make your life very, very difficult if you try to keep my child from me. Lena felt the room tilt. You can't. I won't let you. You don't have a choice. Adrien set the folder on the bedside table. But I'm not here to threaten you, Lena. I'm here to offer you a deal. I don't want anything from you. You want your son safe. So do I. He pulled up a chair, the same one Sophie had occupied, and sat down, bringing himself to eye level with her. I know what you think of me. I know what you've read. And I won't insult your intelligence by claiming I'm a saint. But I'm a father, and that changes everything. You don't even know him. I will. Something flickered in Adrien's expression, something that might have been longing or might have been calculation. Where is he now? NICU. He's premature. 4 weeks early because I've been so stressed about... She stopped herself, but Adrien's slight smile suggested he'd filled in the blanks. Stressed about me, he finished. Ironic, since if you'd come to me when you first found out, I could have provided the best prenatal care money could buy. Private doctors. No stress. No working 12-hour shifts while 7 months pregnant. His voice hardened. What were you thinking? I was thinking I didn't want my child raised in a world where people disappear and the FBI investigates your family business. Lena pushed herself up higher in the bed, ignoring the sharp protest from her exhausted body. I was thinking that one night, one stupid, reckless night, shouldn't condemn my son to a life of looking over his shoulder. Adrien was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. You're not wrong to be afraid. The life I lead isn't safe. It isn't simple. And if I could change it for our son, I would. He leaned forward. But I can't change who I am. I can only promise that anyone who threatens him will cease to exist. Anyone who tries to use him against me will regret it. And anyone who tries to take him from me, including you, Lena, will discover that there are limits to my patience. The threat was delivered so calmly, it took Lena a moment to register it. Are you threatening me? I'm promising you. Adrien's gray eyes held hers. But I'm also offering you a partnership. Not marriage. I'm not naive enough to think you'd accept that. But a co-parenting arrangement that gives our son the best of both worlds. My protection and resources. Your love and presence. A real family, even if it's not a traditional one. I don't trust you. I don't expect you to. Not yet. He stood, straightening his suit jacket. But you will, because I'm going to prove to you that I'm exactly what our son needs. He moved toward the door, then paused. I'm having you move to a private suite on the 6th floor. Better security, better amenities. The NICU team will set up visiting access for both of us. And before you protest, this isn't a request. I've already handled the paperwork. You can't just... I can! And I did! Adrien opened the door. His security detail straightened to attention. Rest, Lena. We'll talk more when you've recovered. He glanced back at her, and for just a moment his expression softened. Thank you. For keeping him safe. For carrying him even when you were terrified. For being stronger than you had any right to be. I mean that. Then he was gone, leaving Lena alone in a delivery room that suddenly felt impossibly small. She stared at the closed door, her mind reeling. Adrien had known. For months, he'd known exactly where she was, what she was planning, and he'd simply waited, watched, protected from the shadows while she'd convinced herself she was in control. The folder lay on the bedside table like a ticking bomb. Lena reached for it with shaking hands, flipping through pages of legal jargon that all pointed to one inescapable conclusion. Adrien Moretti had no intention of letting her disappear with their son. A knock on the door made her jump. Sophie slipped inside, her eyes wide. Was that who I think it was? Adrien Moretti? Lena's voice sounded hollow to her own ears. The baby's father. Sophie sank into the chair Adrien had vacated. Jesus Christ, Lena. When you said powerful and dangerous, I was thinking like a corrupt politician or something, not... She gestured helplessly at the door. Not that. I didn't know. When we met, I didn't know. But he knows now. And he just walked into a hospital and cleared a room like he owned the place. What are you going to do? Lena looked down at the folder in her lap, at the papers that spelled out exactly how little control she had left, at the reality that her son, her beautiful, premature, impossibly small son, was now caught between a mother who wanted to protect him and a father who had the resources to claim him. I don't know, she whispered. I honestly don't know. The private suite on the 6th floor looked nothing like a hospital room. Lena stood in the doorway 2 hours later, still wearing her hospital gown under a borrowed robe, and tried to process what she was seeing. Crown molding traced the ceiling. Hardwood floors gleamed beneath recessed lighting. The bed, an actual bed, not a hospital contraption, sat against one wall draped in Egyptian cotton sheets. A sitting area occupied the corner. Leather couch, flat-screen television, a coffee table that probably cost more than her monthly rent. This is insane, she whispered. The nurse who'd escorted her, a young woman named Rachel with kind eyes and the kind of discretion that came from working in a wing reserved for VIP patients, smiled apologetically. Mr. Moretti was very specific about your comfort. There's a private bathroom through that door, kitchen alcove with a stocked refrigerator. And this, she gestured to a panel on the wall, controls everything, temperature, lighting, privacy screens on the windows. I don't want his money. Lena moved into the room on unsteady legs, her body still aching from delivery. I didn't ask for any of this. I understand. Rachel's tone suggested she'd had this conversation before with other reluctant guests. But you're recovering from giving birth to a premature baby. At the very least, you deserve a comfortable place to rest between NICU visits. She set a folder on the nightstand. Visiting protocols are inside. The NICU is 1 floor down. You can go whenever you're ready. After Rachel left, Lena sank onto the edge of the bed and buried her face in her hands. Everything was spinning out of control at a velocity that made her head hurt. 6 hours ago, she'd been working a cardiac shift and maintaining her carefully constructed lie. Now her son was in the NICU. Adrien Moretti knew everything, and she was sitting in what amounted to a luxury hotel room inside a hospital. Her phone buzzed. Sophie's name lit the screen. Are you okay? Where did they take you? Lena typed back with shaking fingers. 6th floor, private suite. It's like a 5-star hotel. You really did that? Jesus, do you want me to come up? No, I need to see my baby. Then I need to think. Call me if you need anything. I mean it, anything. Lena set the phone aside and opened the folder Rachel had left. Visiting protocols, medical updates, contact information for the NICU staff. And tucked at the back, a handwritten note on heavy cardstock embossed with initials she recognized. AM. The baby needs a name. I'd like to discuss it when you're ready. Adrien. She crumpled the note and threw it across the room, then immediately felt childish for the gesture. Adrien was right. Their son needed a name. She'd avoided thinking about it for months, superstitious that naming him would make the pregnancy too real, would jinx her chances of escaping. Now she had no choice. 20 minutes later, after forcing herself into a fresh hospital gown and pulling her hair into something resembling order, Lena made her way to the elevator. The 5th floor NICU occupied the entire east wing, accessed through security doors that required badge access. She pressed the intercom. Name and relationship to patient? A voice crackled through the speaker. Lena Hart. I'm here to see my son. He was admitted this morning. 4 pounds, 2 ounces, 31 weeks. A pause, then, come in, Ms. Hart. Room 3. The doors clicked open. Lena stepped into a world of controlled chaos, monitors beeping in synchronized rhythm, nurses moving between isolettes with quiet efficiency, the occasional cry of a baby piercing the antiseptic air. Signs everywhere reminded visitors to wash hands, to keep voices low, to respect the fragile lives fighting for strength behind plastic walls. Room 3 was a private bay, which shouldn't have surprised her. Of course, Adrien had arranged for private accommodations. Of course, he'd ensured their son wouldn't be in the general NICU population where anyone could see him. Her baby lay in an isolette under warming lights, his tiny chest rising and falling with reassuring regularity. Someone, the NICU staff probably, had put a blue knit cap on his head and wrapped him in a blanket covered in tiny elephants. IV lines snaked from one impossibly small hand. Monitor leads dotted his chest beneath the blanket. Lena felt her knees go weak. "Ms. Hart?" A woman in scrubs approached. African-American, maybe 40, with warm eyes and the competent air of someone who'd spent years in neonatal care. Her badge read, Dr. Nicole Porter, Neonatology. "I'm Dr. Porter. I've been overseeing your son's care since admission." "How is he?" Lena's voice cracked. "Please tell me he's okay." "He's doing remarkably well for a 31-weeker. Dr. Porter pulled up his chart on a nearby tablet. "Breathing entirely on his own. No respiratory support needed, which is excellent. Heart rate steady. We've got him on IV fluids and monitoring his blood sugar, but so far, no complications. He's a fighter." Relief made Lena sag against the isolette. "Can I touch him?" "Absolutely. Wash your hands at that sink, then you can reach through the portals." Dr. Porter demonstrated, sliding her hands through the circular openings in the isolette's side. Skin-to-skin contact is important for preemies. It helps regulate their temperature and heart rate. Lena scrubbed her hands until they were pink and raw, then carefully slid her fingers through the portals. Her son's skin felt impossibly soft, delicate as tissue paper over fragile bones. She rested one hand on his chest, feeling the flutter of his heartbeat against her palm. "Hi, baby," she whispered. "I'm here. Mama's here." His eyes remained closed, but one tiny hand curled reflexively around her finger. The gesture was so small, so trusting, that Lena felt tears spill down her cheeks. "He needs a name," Dr. Porter said gently. "For the records. We've been calling him Baby Boy Hart, but Luca." The name came out before Lena could second-guess it. She'd been carrying it in the back of her mind for months, afraid to speak it aloud. "Luca James Hart." Dr. Porter smiled. "That's a beautiful name. I'll update the records." Lena stayed there for an hour, her hand resting on Luca's chest, watching him breathe. Every rise and fall of his tiny ribcage felt like a miracle. Every flutter of his eyelids beneath closed lids made her heart clench. He was real. He was here. And despite everything, despite Adrien's intrusion, despite her shattered plans, he was hers. The sound of the door opening made her look up. She expected a nurse. Instead, Adrien Moretti walked into the NICU bay like he belonged there, carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing an expression that managed to be both cautious and determined. "You shouldn't be here," Lena said, her voice low but sharp. "He's my son." Adrien set one coffee cup on the nearby counter and kept the other, his gray eyes fixed on the isolette. "I have every right to be here." "You have rights because you threatened me with lawyers and custody battles." "I stated facts." Adrien moved closer, his gaze still on Luca. "There's a difference." He was quiet for a moment, just staring at the tiny figure under the warming lights. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. "He's so small. He's premature. Because I've been stressed out of my mind for months." Lena withdrew her hand from the isolette, suddenly defensive. If I'd stayed away, you would have given birth in some random city with no support system and no resources." Adrien finally looked at her. "At least here, he has the best medical care available. He has me making sure every possible complication is handled before it becomes a problem. He has a father who operates outside the law and builds empires on violence," Lena interrupted. "Yes, what a gift." Adrien's jaw tightened. "You don't know anything about my life. I know what the FBI says about your life. I know what the news reports. You know headlines and speculation." He set his coffee down with controlled precision. "But you don't know me. You don't know that I've been building legitimate businesses for 5 years specifically, so I could transition out of my family's traditional operations. You don't know that I've used my connections to shut down human trafficking routes that the authorities couldn't touch. You don't know. He stopped, visibly reining himself in. But you're right. I'm not a saint. I've done things that would horrify you. I've made choices that can't be unmade. But I'm also a father now, and that means something. Lena studied his face, looking for the lie. But all she saw was a complicated truth. This man was dangerous, yes. Criminal, probably. But standing in a NICU bay staring at his premature son, he looked almost human. You named him, Adrien said, reading the card on the isolette. Luca. Luca James Hart, Lena confirmed. My last name. For now. Adrien didn't argue the point, which surprised her. It's a good name. Strong. He's not going to be part of your world, Lena said, her voice hardening again. Whatever arrangement you think we're going to have, he doesn't get raised around criminals and violence and whatever else you do. Agreed. She blinked. What? I said agreed. Adrien moved to the isolette, his hands hovering over the portals before he seemed to think better of it. I want better for him than what I had. I want him to have choices I never got, and that means keeping him separate from the darker aspects of my life. He glanced at her. But it doesn't mean I walk away. It means I protect him, provide for him, make sure he never wants for anything. Except a normal father. Define normal. Adrien's smile was bitter. The lawyer who works 80-hour weeks and misses every recital? The businessman who values profit over people? I may not be conventional, Lena, but I'll be present, I'll be engaged, and I'll move heaven and earth to keep him safe. By doing what? Stationing armed guards at his kindergarten? If necessary? Yes. Adrien's expression was utterly serious. You think I'm joking? I'm not. Anyone who threatens my son becomes a problem that gets solved. Permanently. Lena felt cold dread settle in her stomach. You can't just kill people who... I can do exactly that. Adrien's voice remained calm, matter-of-fact. I won't apologize for being what I am, but I will promise that Luca will never see it. He'll never know the details of how threats are handled. He'll just know he's safe. That's not good enough. It's all I can offer. Adrien finally slid his hands through the isolette portals, his movement surprisingly gentle as he touched Luca's tiny foot. I know you wanted to run. I know you had plans for a different life. But running doesn't work, Lena. Not for me. Not with my son. So we find another way. What way? You tell me. He looked at her over the isolette. What would make you feel safe? What would make you trust that I won't turn our son into a criminal? Lena opened her mouth to say nothing would, but stopped herself. Adrien was right. Running was no longer an option. He'd proven he could find her anywhere. And despite her fear, despite her revulsion at what he represented, she couldn't deny one truth. Luca was his son. Biology didn't lie, and the resemblance was already there in the shape of the baby's jaw, the line of his tiny nose. I want boundaries, she said finally. Clear ones. Luca lives with me. He's raised in my world. Normal schools, normal friends, normal life. You can visit, you can be part of his life. But the moment I think he's being exposed to danger, I'm gone. And you won't stop me. I can agree to most of that. Adrien's thumb traced gentle circles on Luca's foot. But if you're gone, so is my protection. And trust me when I say you need it more than you know. Why? Who would threaten a baby? People who want leverage over me. Adrien withdrew his hands from the isolette, his expression darkening. Rivals who'd see our son as a weakness to exploit. I have enemies, Lena. Powerful ones. They'd kill a child without blinking if they thought it would hurt me. The casual way he said it made Lena's blood run cold. Then maybe you shouldn't be a father. Maybe the best thing you could do for Luca is walk away. Not a chance. Adrien's voice turned to steel. He's mine, and I protect what's mine. He's not property. No, he's my son. There's a difference. Adrien pulled out his phone, typed something, then showed her the screen. This is the security detail I've assigned to this hospital. 8 men, rotating shifts. 2 more monitoring the surrounding blocks. Another 3 running background checks on every staff member who comes within 10 feet of the NICU. Lena stared at the organizational chart, feeling dizzy. This is insane. This is necessary, because word is already out. Her head snapped up. What? That I have a son. that there's a new weakness in the Moretti Empire. Adrien pocketed his phone. I've been getting calls since this morning. Congratulations mixed with thinly veiled threats. My rivals are circling, trying to figure out how to use this against me. I didn't ask for this. Panic was rising in Lena's chest. I didn't want any of this. We were fine before you showed up. You were hiding and hoping no one noticed you were pregnant with a crime boss's child. Adrien stepped closer. That's not fine. That's a ticking time bomb. At least now we can control the narrative. Now we can put protections in place before something goes wrong. Or we could have avoided all of it if you'd just used protection in Vegas. The words came out sharper than she intended, but Adrien didn't flinch. Fair point, but we didn't. And now we deal with the consequences. He gestured to Luca. That's not a consequence I regret. Despite everything, Lena felt her throat tighten. Because looking at her son, at their son, she couldn't regret him either. He was innocent in all of this. A tiny life caught between two worlds, neither of which was equipped to give him what he deserved. I need time, she said quietly, to think, to figure out what comes next. You have it. Adrien moved toward the door, then paused. But while you're thinking, remember this. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not walking away. And anyone who tries to hurt our son will discover exactly how ruthless I can be. He met her eyes. That includes you, Lena. If you try to run with him, I will find you. And I won't be this reasonable the second time. Then he was gone, leaving Lena alone with Luca and a terror that felt like it might consume her whole. She stood there for a long time, just watching her son breathe. Eventually, Dr. Porter came back to check vitals and gently suggested Lena get some rest. The first few days after delivery were crucial for recovery, especially after a premature birth. Lena nodded mechanically and made her way back to the sixth-floor suite. The luxury that had seemed absurd earlier now felt like a cage. Beautiful, comfortable, but still a trap she couldn't escape. Her phone buzzed. Sophie again. I'm coming up. Don't argue. 10 minutes later, Sophie arrived carrying a bag from the hospital cafeteria and a determination that reminded Lena why they'd become friends in the first place. Sophie didn't take no for an answer. She also didn't pull punches. You look like hell, Sophie announced, setting the bag on the coffee table. When's the last time you ate? I don't remember. Great, eat this. Sophie pulled out a sandwich, chips, and a bottle of orange juice. And while you're eating, you're going to tell me everything. Starting with how Adrien Moretti knew to show up at the exact moment you gave birth. Lena took the sandwich because her hands needed something to do. He's been watching me for months. He knew I was pregnant, knew where I lived, where I worked, what I was planning. And he just let you keep planning. Why not confront you earlier? I don't know. Lena took a bite of sandwich she couldn't taste. Maybe he was waiting to see what I'd do. Maybe he wanted me to think I had control. Or maybe... She stopped, a horrible thought occurring to her. Maybe he was waiting for the baby to be born so he could use legal leverage. Can't file for paternity rights on an unborn child. Sophie swore quietly. That's calculated as hell. That's who he is. Everything is calculated. Lena set the sandwich down, her appetite gone. He walked into that delivery room and cleared everyone out with a single word. He moved me to this suite without asking. He's got a private security detail on the entire hospital, and he told me that if I try to run, he'll find me and won't be reasonable the second time. Did he threaten you? Not directly, but the implication was clear. Lena looked at her friend. I'm trapped, Sophie. I thought I had options, but I don't. He's too powerful, too connected. And now everyone knows he has a son, which means Luca is already a target. Target for what? People who want leverage over Adrien, rivals, enemies. Lena's voice shook. He said they'd kill a child without blinking if it would hurt him, and I believe it. This is the world I've brought my son into. Sophie was quiet for a moment, processing. Then she reached across and took Lena's hand. Okay, so running isn't an option. What else do you have? Adrien offered a co-parenting arrangement. Luca lives with me, normal life. But Adrien gets visitation and provides protection. Lena laughed bitterly. Like that's a real choice. Accept his help or risk our son getting killed by his enemies. It's still a choice, Sophie said carefully. You could refuse, take your chances, try to disappear anyway. With what money? What resources? Lena pulled her hand away. I have maybe 15,000 saved. That's supposed to cover moving costs, first and last month's rent, setting up a new life. What happens when it runs out? What happens when I need formula or diapers or medical care for a preemie? What happens when Adrien's people find me anyway and I've burned the only bridge that might keep Luca safe? So you're going to accept his deal? I don't see another option. The admission felt like defeat. He wins. He gets his son, and I get to pretend I have any control over how my child is raised. Sophie leaned back against the couch cushions. For what it's worth, I saw him in that NICU. He looked at that baby like, she paused, searching for words, like he'd burned the world down to keep him safe. That's not nothing. It's also terrifying. Lena closed her eyes. The same ruthlessness he'd used to protect Luca is the same ruthlessness that makes him dangerous. You can't separate the two. Maybe not, but you can use it. Sophie's voice took on a strategic edge. He wants his son safe and happy. That gives you leverage, set boundaries, make demands. He won't like it, but if you frame it as what's best for Luca, he might actually listen. Lena opened her eyes. You're saying I should negotiate with him. I'm saying you should stop seeing this as all or nothing. You can't run. You can't fight him directly. But you can establish terms that protect your role as Luca's mother and limit Adrien's influence. Sophie counted off on her fingers. No criminal activity around the baby, no introducing him to the business until he's old enough to understand and consent. Your custody is primary. Adrien gets visitation but doesn't get to override your parenting decisions. And if at any point you feel Luca is in danger because of Adrien's world, you have an exit strategy he agrees not to interfere with. He'll never agree to that last part. Then you negotiate. Maybe it's not, I can leave whenever, but if specific red lines are crossed, we revisit the arrangement. Give him something he wants, regular access to his son, a real relationship, the chance to prove he can be a good father, and in exchange, he gives you real autonomy. Lena felt something loosen in her chest. It wasn't hope exactly, but it was the first thing resembling a plan that didn't involve running scared or submitting completely. You think he'd actually negotiate? I think he's smart enough to know that forcing your compliance will backfire. Kids sense tension. If you're miserable and resentful, Luca will grow up in that atmosphere. But if Adrien can convince you to be a real partner, even a reluctant one, everyone benefits. Sophie squeezed her shoulder. You have more power than you think. Use it. After Sophie left, Lena spent the next hour pacing the suite and trying to organize her thoughts into something resembling a coherent strategy. She made a list, actual pen and paper, because putting words on a page made them feel more real. Non-negotiable terms, 1. Primary custody stays with me, 2. No criminal activity in Luca's presence, 3. All major parenting decisions require mutual agreement. 4. Regular evaluation of safety concerns, 5. Exit clause. If specific threats materialize. Possible compromises. 1. Adrien gets regular visitation, supervised initially. 2. Financial support accepted for medical/childcare needs, 3. Security detail acceptable if kept discreet. 4. Luca can know his father, but not the details of his business. She was still refining the list when someone knocked on the suite door. Lena's heart jumped into her throat. She checked the peephole and saw one of Adrien's security detail, the older one with the scar bisecting his left eyebrow. She opened the door a crack. Yes? Mr. Moretti requests your presence in the NICU, ma'am. There's been a development with your son. Terror flooded through her. What kind of development? Is he okay? He's stable, but Mr. Moretti felt you should be informed immediately. The man's expression was professionally neutral. I can escort you down. Lena grabbed her robe and followed him to the elevator, her mind racing through worst-case scenarios. Infection, respiratory distress, bleeding in the brain, all the complications that could strike premature babies without warning. The NICU was even quieter than before. Most of the overhead lights had been dimmed for night, leaving only the glow of monitors and warming lights to illuminate the space. Adrien stood outside Luca's bay talking to Doctor. Porter, his posture tense in a way that made Lena's stomach drop. "What happened?" she demanded, not bothering with pleasantries. "Is he okay?" Dr. Porter turned with a reassuring smile. "Luca is fine. Vitals are stable. This is actually good news." She gestured for them to follow her into the bay. "He's ready for skin-to-skin contact, kangaroo care. It's one of the best things you can do for a preemie's development." Relief made Lena's knees weak. "That's the development? He's okay?" "Better than okay. He's thriving." Dr. Porter began preparing the space, lowering the lights further and adjusting the isolette. "We usually wait a few days for 31-weekers, but Luca's been so stable we're comfortable starting now. It helps regulate temperature, heart rate, and promotes bonding. Both parents can participate if—" "I'll go first," Lena interrupted, not looking at Adrien. Dr. Porter nodded. "Of course. Let me show you how to position yourself." For the next 20 minutes, Lena learned the delicate process of kangaroo care. How to cradle Luca against her bare chest. How to support his head. How to monitor his breathing and temperature. When the nurse finally settled him against her skin, Lena felt something profound shift inside her chest. He was so warm, so impossibly tiny and perfect. His little fists curled against her collarbone, and she could feel every breath he took, every beat of his hummingbird heart. Tears streamed down her face unchecked. "Hi, baby," she whispered. "I've got you. Mama's got you." Adrien stood a few feet away, watching with an expression Lena couldn't quite read. When Dr. Porter suggested he prepare for his turn, Lena felt a spike of possessiveness. "I'm not done yet," she said. "You can have 30 minutes each," Dr. Porter said gently. "Luca benefits from bonding with both parents." Lena wanted to argue, but the truth was undeniable. Luca needed his father. Biology didn't care about her feelings. So after her 30 minutes ended, she carefully transferred their son to Dr. Porter's experienced hands and watched as Adrien stripped off his suit jacket and dress shirt. He was built like someone who understood violence intimately. Lean muscle and old scars that told stories Lena probably didn't want to hear. He settled into the chair with surprising grace, and when Dr. Porter placed Luca against his chest, Adrien's entire demeanor transformed. The ruthless crime boss disappeared. In his place was just a man holding his newborn son for the first time, looking absolutely terrified. "Support his head," Dr. Porter instructed. "That's it, just like that." Adrien's large hands dwarfed Luca's tiny body. He held him with a reverence Lena hadn't expected, his expression raw with something that might have been wonder, or might have been fear, or might have been both. "He's so small," Adrien said again, his voice barely above a whisper. "He'll grow." Dr. Porter smiled. "You're doing great." Lena watched from the doorway, her emotions a tangled mess. Part of her hated seeing Adrien with Luca, hated the easy way the staff treated him like he belonged there. But another part, a part she didn't want to acknowledge, saw the genuine emotion on his face and couldn't deny it was real. Adrien looked up and caught her staring. "Come here." It wasn't a command exactly, but it wasn't a request either. Lena found herself moving closer despite her better judgment. "Look at him," Adrien said softly. "Look at what we made." Lena looked. At Luca's tiny face peaceful against Adrien's chest, at his miniature fingers flexing against tanned skin, at the impossible miracle of their son existing at all. "I have terms," she said abruptly. "If we're going to do this, co-parent or whatever, I have terms." Adrien's gray eyes fixed on her. "I'm listening." "Primary custody stays with me. No criminal activity anywhere near Luca. All major decisions get made together. And if I ever think he's in danger because of your world, I want an exit strategy you won't interfere with. Some of those are reasonable, some aren't. That's my starting position." Adrien studied her for a long moment. "You've been talking to your friend, the nurse. Sophie has good sense." "She does, which is why she probably told you that forcing compliance will backfire." Adrien looked back down at Luca. "I don't want a prisoner, Lena. I want a partner. Someone who chooses to be part of my son's life instead of being coerced into it." "Then agree to my terms." "I'll agree to most of them. Primary custody with you? Yes." "No criminal activity around Luca?" "Yes." Major decisions made together? Absolutely. His voice hardened. But I won't agree to let you leave if you decide things are too dangerous, because my protection is the only thing keeping both of you alive. Remove that, and you become targets without defense. So I'm supposed to just trust you? Eventually, yes. Adrien shifted carefully, supporting Luca's head as the baby made a small sound. But I understand that's asking a lot. So here's my counteroffer. We establish specific safety benchmarks. If those benchmarks are violated, if Luca or you are directly threatened because of my business, we relocate to a secure property where you maintain custody, but have access to better protection. Not running, not hiding, just a tactical repositioning that keeps you both safe while maintaining our co-parenting arrangement. Lena turned the idea over in her mind. It wasn't what she wanted, but it was better than being completely trapped. What kind of secure property? I own a compound upstate. 30 acres, private security, completely off the grid if needed. You'd have your own wing, complete autonomy within the property. Luca could grow up with space to run and play, with guards who'd die before letting anyone harm him. That sounds like a prison. It's a fortress. There's a difference. Adrien met her eyes. But it's only if things escalate. If we can maintain a normal life here in the city, that's preferable. I want Luca to have friends and school and everything a regular kid has. I just want him to have it safely. And you think you can guarantee that? I know I can. Adrien's voice carried absolute certainty. Because anyone who threatens my son will cease to exist. Quickly, quietly, and permanently. The casual mention of murder should have horrified Lena. Instead, she found herself thinking about Luca, about the tiny, vulnerable life currently sleeping against his father's chest, and understanding on a visceral level that she would do anything to protect him too. Maybe not murder, but anything within her power. I need time, she said finally, to think about all of this, to figure out what I can live with. You have until Luca is cleared to leave the NICU. Adrien glanced at Dr. Porter, who'd been discreetly monitoring from across the bay. How long? Depends on his progress. Could be 2 weeks, could be 4. Dr. Porter made a note on her tablet. We'll know more after the first week. 2 weeks then, Lena said. I'll give you an answer in 2 weeks. Adrien nodded slowly. That's fair. They stayed like that for another 20 minutes. Adrien holding Luca, Lena standing nearby, both of them locked in an uneasy truce built on shared biology and mutual terror. When Dr. Porter finally suggested returning Luca to the isolette, Adrien's reluctance was visible. Can I come back tomorrow? He asked. Visiting hours are flexible for parents, Dr. Porter confirmed. Just check in at the desk. After Luca was settled back under the warming lights, Adrien pulled his shirt and jacket back on with practiced efficiency. He looked at Lena, his expression guarded. I meant what I said. I want to be a real father, not just a name on legal documents. I know. Lena crossed her arms. But wanting it and being capable of it are different things. Then I'll prove I'm capable. Adrien moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, you're going to be a good mother. I saw it tonight. The way you held him, talked to him. He's lucky to have you. The compliment caught Lena off guard. Before she could formulate a response, Adrien was gone, leaving her alone in the NICU bay with their sleeping son and questions she had no idea how to answer. The next 5 days fell into a rhythm that felt surreal in its domesticity. Lena spent her mornings in the NICU doing kangaroo care with Luca, her afternoons resting in the 6th-floor suite that no longer felt quite so much like a cage, and her evenings back in the NICU watching her son grow stronger with each passing hour. Adrien appeared twice daily like clockwork, 9 a.m. and 7 p.m., always impeccably dressed, always bringing coffee she hadn't asked for but found herself drinking anyway. They didn't talk much during those visits. The space was too small for the conversations they needed to have, and Luca provided a convenient excuse to avoid the larger questions looming over them both. But Lena couldn't help noticing the small things, the way Adrien's hands gentled automatically when he touched their son, the questions he asked Dr. Porter about developmental milestones and feeding schedules, the fact that he showed up exactly when he said he would, never late, never making excuses. On the 6th day, everything changed. Lena was in the middle of kangaroo care, Luca sleeping peacefully against her chest when Adrien's lieutenant, the scarred one whose name she'd learned was Marcus, appeared in the doorway of the NICU bay. His expression was carefully neutral, but Lena had spent enough time around Adrien's security detail to recognize tension when she saw it. Miss Hart, Marcus said quietly. Mr. Moretti needs to speak with you. It's urgent. Lena's arms instinctively tightened around Luca. What's wrong? Is someone… Nothing's wrong with the baby, but we need to move you to a secure location within the hospital. Marcus glanced at the hallway beyond. Now please. Dr. Porter materialized at his shoulder, her professional calm firmly in place. Let me take Luca. You should go. Every maternal instinct Lena possessed screamed at her not to let go of her son, but the look on Marcus's face suggested this wasn't a request. She carefully transferred Luca to Dr. Porter's experienced hands, her heart hammering against her ribs. What's happening? She demanded, as Marcus led her toward a service elevator she'd never noticed before. Mr. Moretti will explain. Marcus pressed his thumb to a biometric scanner. The elevator doors opened immediately. Please, ma'am. The elevator descended 2 floors, then opened into what appeared to be a private conference room. Adrien stood at the head of a polished table, surrounded by 3 men Lena didn't recognize. All of them looked like they'd stepped out of the same catalog as Marcus. Expensive suits barely concealing the violence they were clearly capable of. Adrien's expression was harder than she'd ever seen it. Lena, good. We have a problem. What kind of problem? She moved into the room, acutely aware of Marcus taking up position behind her, blocking the only exit. And why did you pull me away from Luca? Because the problem involves you directly. Adrien gestured to one of the other men, Asian, maybe 30, with the kind of stillness that suggested military training. This is James Chen. He runs my intelligence operations. James, tell her what you told me. James pulled out a tablet and set it on the table. The screen showed surveillance footage of the hospital's main entrance. Lena watched as a black SUV pulled up to the curb and 3 men climbed out. They moved with purpose toward the automatic doors. These men arrived 40 minutes ago, James said, his voice clipped and professional. They asked about recent admissions to the NICU. Specifically, they were looking for information about baby boy Hart. Lena felt the blood drain from her face. Who are they? Associates of the Volkov Bratva, Adrien said flatly. Russian organized crime. They've been trying to muscle into my territory for the past year. Apparently they've decided my son is an opportunity they can't pass up. Opportunity for what? Leverage. Adrien's jaw tightened. They know I won't negotiate if they simply threaten my business interests. But a child, that's a different kind of pressure. The room tilted slightly. Lena gripped the edge of the conference table. They're here for Luca? In the hospital? They were. James swiped to another image, this one showing the same 3 men being escorted out by hospital security. Our people intercepted them before they could access the 5th floor. They claimed to be lost, looking for a friend in oncology, but the story doesn't hold up. They were surveilling, Marcus added from behind Lena. Testing our response time, gauging our security presence. Adrien moved around the table until he was directly in front of Lena. This is what I meant when I said you need my protection. These people don't care that Luca is an infant. They don't care that you're uninvolved in my business. All they see is a weakness they can exploit. So what do we do? Lena's voice came out smaller than she intended. Call the police? File a report? The police can't help with this. Adrien's tone gentled slightly. But I can. I'm moving both of you out of Mercy General tonight. There's a private medical facility upstate, discreet, secure, with a NICU that rivals anything in the city. Dr. Porter and her team are being offered very generous contracts to continue Luca's care there. You can't just move an entire NICU team. I can do exactly that. Adrien pulled out his phone and showed her what appeared to be architectural plans. The facility has been under construction for 8 months. It was supposed to be a recovery center for high-profile clients. I'm repurposing it. Lena stared at the plans, at the compound that looked more like a fortress than a hospital. How long have you been planning this? Since the moment I found out you were pregnant. Adrien's honesty was almost worse than a lie. I knew eventually there would be threats. I wanted to be prepared. This is insane. You're talking about uprooting our lives because some Russians showed up asking questions. They didn't just show up asking questions. James tapped his tablet again. New footage appeared, this time showing one of the men lingering near the emergency exit on the 5th floor, clearly photographing the security setup. They were conducting reconnaissance. That means they're planning something. And I'm not waiting around to find out what. Lena looked at Adrien, searching his face for any sign this was an overreaction. But all she saw was cold calculation and the kind of protective fury that would absolutely burn the world down if it meant keeping Luca safe. "I need to see him," she said abruptly. "Before we go anywhere, I need to see my son." "Of course," Adrien nodded to Marcus. "Escort her back to the NICU. Full detail. No one gets within 10 feet of her or the baby." The trip back to the 5th floor took on a surreal quality. Marcus and 2 other security personnel flanked Lena like she was a head of state, their eyes constantly scanning the corridors for threats. When they reached the NICU, Dr. Porter was waiting with Luca already prepared in a transport isolette. "I heard," Dr. Porter said quietly, "about the relocation." "You're really willing to move your entire practice upstate?" Lena couldn't keep the disbelief from her voice. "Mr. Moretti is paying me 3 times my current salary and funding a research wing I've wanted for 5 years. Dr. Porter's expression was complicated, pragmatic acceptance mixed with something that might have been excitement. "And honestly, if there are people targeting this baby, I'd rather treat him somewhere with better security. I've seen what happens when hospital security fails." Lena wanted to argue, but Luca chose that moment to wake up and start fussing. She reached through the isolette portals automatically, letting him grip her finger with his tiny fist. "We're moving, baby," she whispered. "Somewhere safer. Somewhere they can't reach you." Over the next 3 hours, Lena watched Adrien's operation unfold with military precision. A convoy of 3 black SUVs arrived at a private entrance she hadn't known existed. Dr. Porter, 2 NICU nurses, and a neonatologist piled into the first vehicle, along with enough medical equipment to stock a small hospital. Luca traveled in the second SUV, his transport isolette secured with the kind of care usually reserved for explosives. Lena rode in the third vehicle with Adrien and Marcus, watching the city lights fade as they headed north into darkness. "Where exactly are we going?" she asked when they'd been driving for 30 minutes. "Westchester County, about 90 minutes from the city." Adrien was working on his laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard with practiced efficiency. "The property sits on 30 acres, main house, guest house, medical wing, security barracks, everything we need." "Security barracks? How many people are you employing?" 15 on rotation, former military mostly, a few with specialized medical training. He glanced up from his screen. "You'll have your own wing in the main house. 3 bedrooms, private kitchen, living area, completely separate from my space." "How generous. A gilded cage with room service." "It's not a cage." Adrien closed his laptop. "There's a library, a gym, walking trails through the woods. In a few months, when Luca's stronger, there's a nursery I had designed specifically for him. Natural light, safe toys, everything at proper developmental height." Lena turned to stare at him. "You had a nursery designed before he was even born?" "I like to plan ahead." "That's not planning. That's obsession." "Call it what you want." Adrien's voice remained level. "But that nursery will keep him safer than anything you could have provided on a nurse's salary in whatever random city you were planning to disappear to." The barb hit home. Lena looked away, watching trees flash past the tinted windows. He was right, of course. Her plan had been desperate and poorly thought out, but it had been hers. Now even that illusion of control was gone. They arrived at the compound just after 11 p.m. Security gates opened automatically as their convoy approached, revealing a winding driveway that cut through dense forest. When the main house came into view, Lena felt her breath catch despite herself. It wasn't quite a mansion, but it was close. Modern architecture blended with traditional elements, lots of glass and steel mixed with warm wood tones. Lights blazed from every window, and Lena could see people moving inside, preparing for their arrival. "Medical wing is the East Edition," Adrien said as their SUV pulled to a stop. "Dr. Porter's team is already setting up. Luca will be installed in his room within the hour." "His room? Not a NICU bay?" "Private NICU suite. All the same equipment, better accommodations." Adrien climbed out and offered her his hand. Lena ignored it, stepping down on her own. His lips quirked in what might have been amusement. The interior of the house matched the exterior. Expensive without being ostentatious. Comfortable without sacrificing security. Lena spotted cameras in every corner, reinforced windows, doors that looked like they could withstand a battering ram. This wasn't a home. It was a fortress pretending to be a home. A woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and shrewd eyes approached them. "Mr. Moretti, Miss Hart, I'm Catherine Reeves, the house manager. Your rooms are prepared. Dinner is available if you're hungry, or I can have trays sent up." "Just show Ms. Hart to her wing," Adrien said. "I need to check on the medical setup." Catherine led Lena up a grand staircase and down a hallway that seemed to stretch forever. At the end, she opened double doors onto a suite that made the sixth-floor hospital room look like a closet. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the forest. A sitting area with plush furniture dominated one corner. Through an open doorway, Lena could see a bedroom with a king-size bed and what appeared to be a spa bathroom beyond. Everything was decorated in soft neutrals, grays and creams and whites that should have felt cold, but somehow didn't. "The nursery is through that door," Catherine said, pointing to another entrance. "Mr. Moretti had it designed to connect to both your room and the medical wing for easy access. There's a bassinet in your bedroom as well for when the baby is cleared for overnight stays." Lena walked to the nursery door and opened it. The room beyond stole what little breath she had left. Pale green walls. A crib that looked like it cost more than her car. A rocking chair positioned near windows that let in moonlight. Built-in shelves already stocked with books and toys organized by developmental stage. A changing table with every supply imaginable. "He thought of everything," she whispered. "Mr. Moretti is very thorough." Catherine's tone was diplomatically neutral. "The medical wing is accessible through that hallway. Your son is being settled as we speak. Dr. Porter asked that you give them 30 minutes to complete the transfer." After Catherine left, Lena sank into the rocking chair and let herself cry. Not the silent tears she'd shed in the hospital, but deep, racking sobs that came from somewhere primal. She cried for the life she'd planned and lost, for the illusion of control that had been stripped away, for the impossible situation she'd brought her son into through one night of reckless abandon. But underneath the grief was something else, something she didn't want to name but couldn't deny. Relief. Because as much as she hated Adrien's methods and resented his control, she couldn't argue with the results. Luca was safe here in a way he never would have been in some random Midwestern apartment with a mother constantly looking over her shoulder. Exactly 30 minutes later, a soft knock announced Dr. Porter's arrival. "We're all set up," she said, her exhaustion evident despite her smile. "Luca handled the transfer beautifully. Do you want to see?" The medical wing was everything Adrien had promised. Luca's suite looked less like a hospital room and more like a high-end nursery that happened to have medical equipment. The isolette sat in the center, surrounded by monitors and IV pumps, but the walls were painted with soft murals of clouds and stars. Real plants sat in the corners, carefully selected non-toxic varieties, Lena noted. A comfortable chair had been positioned for Kangaroo care. Luca slept peacefully, completely unaware that his entire world had been uprooted. "He's doing well," Dr. Porter assured her. "All vitals stable. The transport didn't stress him at all." "Can I stay with him tonight?" "Of course. There's a sleep chair that converts to a bed." Dr. Porter showed her the mechanism. "I'll be in the staff quarters if you need anything. 2 nurses on overnight shift, me on call." After Dr. Porter left, Lena settled into the chair and watched her son breathe. Somewhere in the house, she could hear Adrien's voice giving orders, coordinating security, doing whatever crime bosses did when they weren't playing devoted father. The duality was dizzying. She must have dozed off because the next thing she knew, Adrien was standing in the doorway holding 2 mugs. "Tea," he said quietly, offering her one. "You look like you need it." Lena took the mug because her hands needed something to hold. "What time is it?" 2 a.m. "I saw your light on." Adrien moved to the isolette, his gaze softening as he looked at Luca. "He's really okay? The move didn't hurt him?" "Dr. Porter says he's fine." "Good." Adrien sipped his own tea, black coffee actually, Lena realized. "I know this isn't what you wanted, the compound, the isolation, all of it." "No, it's not. But it's necessary." He turned to face her. Those men at the hospital weren't bluffing. The Volkov Bratva doesn't make idle threats. If they'd gotten access to the NICU... I get it. Lena cut him off, not wanting to hear the rest of that sentence. I understand why we're here. That doesn't mean I have to like it. Fair enough. Adrien was quiet for a moment. The house manager, Catherine, she used to run a safe house for the FBI, witness protection cases mostly. She knows how to make a prison feel like a home. Is that supposed to be comforting? It's supposed to be honest. Adrien set his mug down and moved closer. I'm not going to lie to you, Lena. This situation is what it is. But I can promise that within the boundaries of keeping you both safe, I'll give you as much freedom as possible. Define as much freedom as possible. You can go anywhere on the property. You can have visitors, after they're vetted. You can order anything you want, pursue hobbies, work remotely if you choose to keep your nursing license active. He paused. What you can't do is leave without security, and you can't take Luca into the city until the threat is neutralized. How long will that take? However long it takes. Adrien's voice hardened. The Volkov situation is being handled, but these things don't resolve overnight. Lena wanted to ask what being handled meant, whether people would die, whether Adrien's hands would be the ones pulling triggers or simply giving orders that resulted in the same outcome. But she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. I need to call Sophie, she said instead. She's been texting. She deserves to know I'm okay. Already handled. I had Marcus inform her you'd been relocated for security reasons. She'll receive a substantial bonus for her discretion and continued friendship. Adrien must have seen Lena's expression because he added, she can visit once the initial security sweep is complete and she signs the appropriate NDAs. You're paying my best friend to stay loyal to me? I'm compensating her for the inconvenience of having her friend disappear and ensuring she has no financial incentive to discuss your location with the wrong people. Adrien's tone suggested this was perfectly reasonable. There's a difference. Lena set her tea down before she threw it at him. You can't just buy everyone. I'm not buying anyone. I'm protecting my investment. He gestured to Luca. Our son's safety is worth more than any amount of money. If that means paying your friend a consulting fee for her silence, I'll do it. If it means buying this entire hospital and relocating it to my property, I'll do that too. That's insane. That's fatherhood. Adrien moved toward the door, then paused. Get some rest. Tomorrow I'll show you the rest of the property. You should know what resources are available. After he left, Lena returned to watching Luca sleep. The baby's chest rose and fell with mechanical regularity, completely oblivious to the storm raging around him. She envied his innocence. The next morning arrived too soon. Lena woke to find herself curled in the converted sleep chair, her neck protesting the awkward angle. Dr. Porter appeared with coffee and a breakfast tray that looked like it had been prepared by a professional chef. Adrien's orders, Dr. Porter explained at Lena's questioning look. He insisted you needed proper nutrition for recovery. Of course he did. Lena accepted the coffee. Perfect temperature, exactly the right amount of cream. She hated that he'd remembered. How's Luca? Excellent. Gained 2 ounces overnight, which is wonderful for a preemie. His oxygen saturation is perfect. At this rate, we might be able to try bottle feeding in a few days. The thought of feeding her son, of that tangible connection, made Lena's chest tighten with longing. Really? Really? He's a fighter, this one. Dr. Porter made notes on her tablet. Mr. Moretti asked me to tell you he's waiting in the main sitting room when you're ready for the property tour. Lena took her time getting ready, partially because her body still ached from delivery, partially because she wasn't ready to face Adrien's version of hospitality. But eventually, she made her way downstairs to find him waiting exactly where Dr. Porter had indicated. He'd traded his suit for dark jeans and a black Henley that somehow made him look more dangerous rather than less. Casual Adrien was harder to dismiss than businessman Adrien. Ready? He asked. Do I have a choice? Always. But his slight smile suggested they both knew that wasn't entirely true. The property tour took 90 minutes. Adrien showed her everything. The security center with its wall of monitors, the armory that made Lena's skin crawl, the staff quarters where his people lived in comfortable efficiency. But he also showed her the library with floor-to-ceiling books, the greenhouse where Catherine apparently grew herbs and vegetables, the walking trails that wound through the forest with discreet security cameras hidden among the trees. There's a gym in the East Wing, Adrien said as they walked. Personal trainer available if you want. And a pool. Indoor, heated, accessible, year-round. Very thoughtful for a prison warden. I'm not your warden, Lena. I'm your... He stopped, seeming to reconsider his words. I'm Luca's father, and your partner in keeping him safe. That's all. They emerged from the trees onto a cleared area overlooking a small lake. A dock extended into the water, and Lena could see a boathouse at the far end. This is beautiful, she admitted reluctantly. I thought you might like it. Adrien's gaze was on the water. When Luca's older, we can teach him to swim here, to fish. Normal father-son activities. Nothing about this is normal. Normal is overrated. He turned to face her. Your 2 weeks are almost up. You said you'd give me an answer about co-parenting. I need to know where we stand. Lena looked out at the lake, at the peaceful scene that masked the violence underpinning everything. She thought about her list of demands, about Sophie's advice to negotiate. But standing here in the reality Adrien had constructed, she realized negotiation implied equal footing, and they'd never had that. I don't trust you, she said finally. I know. But I believe you love him, our son. I saw it in the NICU. I see it in all of this. She gestured at the compound. This isn't just about control. You actually care. More than I thought possible. Adrien's admission came quietly. I've never felt protective of anything the way I feel about him. It's terrifying and clarifying all at once. Then here's my answer. Lena met his eyes. I'll stay. I'll co-parent. I'll accept your protection because I don't have better options and because I believe you when you say Luca needs it. But I need you to hear this. The moment he's old enough to understand, to make his own choices about what world he wants to be part of, you have to let him choose, not manipulate, not coerce. One non-negotiable. You don't get to trap one non-negotiable. You don't get to trap our son the way you've trapped me. Adrien was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried weight. All right. When he's old enough, 18, legal adult, he gets a real choice. No pressure from me. He extended his hand. Deal? Lena looked at his offered hand, at the physical representation of the pact they were making. Then she reached out and shook it, feeling his warm grip close around hers with surprising gentleness. Deal. They stood there by the lake, hands clasped, sealing an agreement that would shape all of their futures. Lena knew she was making a bargain with someone dangerous, but she was also making a bargain with someone who loved their son enough to build a fortress to protect him. It would have to be enough. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange bubble of domesticity, punctuated by moments that reminded Lena exactly what kind of world she'd agreed to inhabit. Luca continued to thrive under Dr. Porter's care, gaining weight and strength with each passing day. On day 12, he took his first bottle, only an ounce of formula, but Lena cried anyway as his tiny mouth worked at the nipple with determined focus. Adrien had been there too, his hand resting on her shoulder as they watched their son feed. And for just a moment, the gesture felt natural instead of possessive. But then she'd see the armed guards patrolling the perimeter at dawn, or catch snippets of Adrien's phone conversations conducted in Italian, his voice dropping to lethal quiet when discussing people who'd become problems requiring permanent solutions. Or notice the way Marcus appeared at Adrien's side with folders stamped confidential, their contents hidden, but their significance clear in the grim set of Adrien's jaw. The duality was exhausting. Sophie visited on day 16, arriving in one of Adrien's SUVs with Marcus as her escort. She'd signed the NDAs without complaint and handed over her phone at the security checkpoint, but the look she gave Lena when they finally embraced spoke volumes. You look good, Sophie said, holding her at arm's length. Better than I expected. I'm sleeping in a bed that probably costs more than my car and eating food prepared by a private chef. Lena led her friend toward the medical wing. It's easy to look good when every physical need is anticipated before you can ask. But it's still a cage, Soph. A beautiful, comfortable, well-appointed cage. They found Luca awake in his isolette, his dark eyes tracking movement with increasing awareness. Sophie made appropriate cooing noises while Lena updated her on feeding schedules and weight gain and all the minutiae of premature infant care. He looks like his father, Sophie observed quietly. The resemblance is getting stronger. I know. Lena reached through the isolette portals to stroke Luca's cheek. Everyone who sees him will know. There's no hiding genetics. Maybe that's not a bad thing. If everyone knows he's Adrien Moretti's son, who's going to be stupid enough to threaten him? People who want to hurt Adrien by hurting us. Lena withdrew her hand. That's what this whole compound is about. Protection from enemies I'll never see coming because I don't understand the rules of his world. Sophie pulled her away from the isolette, lowering her voice. Lena, real talk. Are you safe here? Is he treating you okay? Because money and nice rooms don't mean anything if he's not hurting me. Lena cut her off. If anything, he's been considerate, respectful of boundaries I set. He hasn't pushed for anything beyond co-parenting. She paused. Which is almost more unsettling than if he were being overtly controlling. Why? Because it would be easier if he were a monster. Then I could hate him cleanly. Lena sank into the chair beside the isolette. But he's not. He's complicated. He kills people. I'm not naive about that. But he also sits with Luca for hours and reads to him, even though the baby can't possibly understand the words. He's built an empire on violence, but he remembers how I take my coffee and make sure Dr. Porter has everything she needs before she can ask. So you're starting to like him. I'm starting to understand him. There's a difference. Lena looked at her friend. Tell me what's happening in the real world. At the hospital, in the city, I feel like I've been locked away for years instead of weeks. Sophie launched into updates about hospital politics and mutual friends, and the new resident who'd already managed to insult 3 attending physicians. Normal life. The life Lena had left behind when her water broke and Adrien walked through that delivery room door. They were still talking when Adrien appeared in the doorway, his presence immediately shifting the energy in the room. Sophie. He nodded politely. I hope Marcus didn't give you trouble at the gate. Just the standard security theater. Sophie's tone was carefully neutral. Very thorough. Necessary, unfortunately. Adrien moved to the isolette, his attention immediately focusing on Luca. How's he doing today? Good, Lena answered. Dr. Porter thinks we might try 2 ounces at the next feeding. Excellent. Adrien's slight smile was genuine. I brought lunch up from the kitchen. Catherine made that pasta salad you mentioned liking. This last was directed at Sophie. You're welcome to stay. The casual hospitality would have been charming if it weren't so clearly calculated. Adrien was showing Sophie that Lena was well cared for, that the compound was comfortable, that there was nothing to worry about. It was masterful manipulation dressed as courtesy. Sophie must have recognized it too because her expression flickered with something that might have been annoyance or might have been grudging respect. Thanks, but I should head back. I'm on shift tonight. After Sophie left, with promises to visit again soon and a meaningful look that said they'd be having a longer conversation via heavily encrypted text messages, Lena found herself alone with Adrien in the medical wing. She doesn't trust me, Adrien observed, watching the security monitor that showed Sophie's SUV pulling away from the compound. Can you blame her? No, she's a good friend. I'd be concerned if she wasn't protective of you. He turned from the monitor. But her approval isn't what I need. Yours is. You already have my agreement to co-parent. What more do you want? I want you to stop looking at this place like it's a prison. Adrien gestured around the medical wing. I want you to see it as a home, our son's home. That's a lot to ask. I know. He was quiet for a moment. There's something I need to tell you. About the Volkov situation. Lena's stomach dropped. What about it? It's been resolved. Adrien's tone was matter-of-fact, but his eyes held something darker. The men who came to the hospital won't be a problem anymore. Neither will their associates. The Bratva has agreed to respect territorial boundaries and leave my family alone. She didn't ask how it had been resolved. Didn't want to know the details of negotiations that probably involved bodies and leverage and threats carried out with cold efficiency. So we can leave? Go back to the city? Not yet. Adrien moved closer. The immediate threat is handled, but there are always other players, other people who might see opportunity in my son's existence. I need more time to shore up defenses, to make it clear that touching you or Luca means death. How much time? Months, maybe a year. He must have seen her expression because he added, I'm not trying to keep you captive indefinitely. But I need to be sure, absolutely certain, that when you do leave this compound, every person in my world knows the cost of threatening what's mine. We're not property. No, you're infinitely more valuable than property. Adrien's hand came up, hesitating near her face before falling back to his side. You're the mother of my child, and despite everything, despite the circumstances that brought us here, I find myself wanting to protect you for reasons that have nothing to do with Luca. The admission hung in the air between them. Lena's breath caught because she recognized the dangerous territory they were entering. It would be so easy to let herself fall into the fantasy Adrien was offering, partnership, protection, maybe even something resembling love. But that path led nowhere good. Don't, she said quietly. Don't make this more complicated than it already is. Too late. Adrien's smile was rueful. It became complicated the moment you walked into that Vegas hotel bar. I just didn't know it yet. Before Lena could respond, Dr. Porter appeared with perfect timing to announce it was time for Luca's next feeding. The interruption felt like a reprieve. Adrien excused himself with a promise to check back later, leaving Lena to focus on the simpler task of nourishing her son. But his words stayed with her. The suggestion that his feelings were evolving beyond mere co-parenting obligation. The implication that he saw her as more than just the mother of his heir. It was flattering and terrifying in equal measure. That night, unable to sleep despite the comfortable bed and quiet surroundings, Lena found herself wandering the compound's library. Catherine kept it beautifully maintained, shelves organized by genre and author, comfortable reading nooks positioned near windows, even a fireplace that crackled with real wood. She was examining a first edition of something literary when Adrien's voice came from behind her. Couldn't sleep? Lena turned to find him in the doorway, wearing pajama pants and a t-shirt that made him look almost domestic, almost normal. Too much on my mind. Join the club. He moved into the library, pouring himself a drink from the bar cart in the corner. Scotch? Or are you still avoiding alcohol? I'm not breastfeeding anymore, so... Lena stopped herself. Actually, yes. I could use a drink. Adrien poured her 2 fingers of amber liquid and handed her the glass. Their fingers brushed in the exchange, and Lena felt that spark she'd been trying to ignore since Vegas. Chemistry didn't care about circumstances or common sense. To complicated situations, Adrien said, raising his glass. And the children caught in the middle of them. Lena clinked her glass against his and took a sip. The scotch burned pleasantly down her throat. They settled into facing chairs near the fireplace, the crackling wood filling the silence. For several minutes, neither spoke. Then Adrien set his glass down and leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I need to tell you something. About my family. About how I became who I am. You don't owe me your life story. Maybe not, but I want you to understand. He stared into the fire. My father was a traditional man. Old school organized crime. He believed in violence first, negotiation second. By the time I was 18, I'd seen things that would horrify most people. Done things that would land me in prison for life if anyone could prove them. Lena's grip tightened on her glass, but she didn't interrupt. When he died, heart attack, ironically peaceful for a man who'd lived by the gun, I inherited an empire built on fear and blood money. I could have continued his legacy, ruled the same way he did. Adrien's jaw tightened, but I'd also seen how that life destroyed everyone it touched. My mother died young from stress and fear. My younger sister refuses to speak to me because she can't reconcile the brother she loved with the monster I became. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to know I'm trying to be different. The legitimate businesses I'm building aren't just fronts, they're my exit strategy. In 5 years, maybe 10, I want to be clean, completely separated from the family operations. He looked at her finally. I want that for Luca. A father who's a businessman, not a criminal. Someone he can be proud of instead of afraid of. That's a nice story. Lena's voice came out harder than she intended. But you just told me you resolved the Volkov situation. We both know what that means. You can't claim to want legitimacy while simultaneously having people killed. You're right, I can't. Adrien didn't flinch from the accusation. But I can protect my son from immediate threats while working toward a different future. Those 2 things aren't mutually exclusive. They are if the violence follows you no matter how legitimate your businesses become. Which is why I need time, why I need this compound, Why I need you to trust that I'm doing everything possible to build a world where Luca can grow up normal. He stood, moving to the window that overlooked the dark forest. Do you know what the hardest part of all this is? What? Knowing that despite everything I do, you'll never look at me the way you did in Vegas. When I was just a stranger who made you laugh, before you knew what I really am. The honesty in his voice made Lena's chest ache. She set down her glass and moved to stand beside him at the window. That person in Vegas wasn't real. He was a fantasy, just like the woman I was pretending to be that night. Maybe, or maybe that was the most honest version of both of us. Adrien turned to face her. No expectations, no history, just two people who wanted each other. And look where that got us. It got us Luca. Adrien's hand came up again, and this time Lena didn't pull away when he tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. I can't regret that, no matter how complicated everything else is. Lena knew she should step back, should maintain the boundaries she'd worked so hard to establish. But his touch was gentle, and his eyes held something raw and vulnerable that the ruthless crime boss never showed the world. This is a bad idea, she whispered. Probably the worst. But Adrien didn't move away either. The kiss happened in slow motion, both of them leaning in, both of them knowing it was a mistake, neither of them able to stop. His lips were soft against hers, tasting of scotch and something darker. Lena's hands came up to his chest, feeling his heart hammering beneath her palms. It would have been so easy to lose herself in the kiss, to let it escalate into something that would irrevocably change the careful distance she'd maintained. But the sound of footsteps in the hallway broke the spell. Lena pulled back just as Marcus appeared in the library doorway. Sir, we have a situation. Adrien's entire demeanor shifted in an instant, from the vulnerable man kissing her to the cold, calculating strategist. What kind of situation? Perimeter breach. Eastern quadrant. Cameras picked up movement 20 minutes ago. We've contained it, but you should see the footage. Adrien was already moving toward the door. He paused to look back at Lena. Stay in your wing. Lock the doors. I'll handle this. Then he was gone, leaving Lena alone in the library with her racing heart and the ghost of his kiss still burning on her lips. She made her way back to her wing on unsteady legs, her mind spinning. The kiss had been a mistake, but it had also confirmed what she'd been trying to ignore. The attraction between them hadn't faded. If anything, proximity and shared parenthood had made it stronger. Lena checked on Luca in the medical wing, still sleeping peacefully, monitored by the night nurse, before returning to her own room. She locked the door as Adrien had instructed, then stood at the window watching the compound below. Lights moved in the darkness. She could see armed figures patrolling, their movements coordinated and professional. Whatever the perimeter breach was, Adrien's security team was handling it with military precision. An hour later, a soft knock on her door made her jump. She checked the peephole and saw Adrien, his expression grim. It's me. Can I come in? Lena unlocked the door. Adrien entered, and she could see tension radiating from every line of his body. What happened? She asked. Photographer, freelance, probably hoping to sell photos to tabloids. Adrien's voice was tight with controlled fury. He made it 300 yards onto the property before our motion sensors picked him up. Did he get any pictures? Of the exterior. Nothing identifying. Marcus is handling it. The way he said handling it made Lena's stomach turn. Adrien, you're not going to kill a photographer for trespassing? No. He moved to her sitting area and sank into a chair like the weight of the world pressed on his shoulders. But I'm going to make sure he understands that selling those photos or revealing this location would be the last mistake he ever makes. That's still a threat. That's reality. Adrien looked up at her. This is what I meant about the world I live in. There are always people trying to find weaknesses, exploit opportunities. That photographer probably thought he'd stumbled onto celebrity gossip gold. He has no idea how close he came to becoming a statistic. Lena sat in the chair across from him. How do you live like this? Constantly on guard, never trusting anyone. Practice. And by surrounding myself with people whose loyalty I've earned or bought. His smile was bitter. It's exhausting, which is why moments like tonight in the library feel like oxygen, a few minutes of being human instead of being a target. The kiss was a mistake, Lena said, needing to establish the boundary before it blurred further. I know. Adrien didn't argue. But I'm not sorry it happened. We can't let it happen again. Why not? His gaze held hers. We're already bound together by Luca. We're already living in the same house. We're already attracted to each other. Pretending otherwise is insulting to both our intelligences. Because it complicates everything. We're supposed to be co-parents, partners in raising our son, not... She gestured helplessly between them. Not lovers? Adrien stood, moving toward the door. You're right. We shouldn't complicate things further. But answer me this, Lena. If circumstances were different, if I were the businessman from Vegas instead of who I really am, would you want this? The honest answer was yes. Without the criminal empire and the violence and the constant threat, she could imagine falling for Adrien Moretti. He was intelligent, attentive, fiercely protective of the people he loved. In another life, he might have been exactly what she needed. But this wasn't another life. It doesn't matter, she said finally. Circumstances aren't different. You are who you are. And I have to protect myself and Luca from getting too tangled in your world. Fair enough? Adrien opened the door, then paused. But for the record, that person in Vegas was real. He's the man I want to be. And maybe someday, if I can actually build the legitimate future I'm working toward, you'll believe that. After he left, Lena returned to her window vigil. The compound had returned to its normal state of controlled security. The photographer was probably being driven far away with threats ringing in his ears and a generous payment to ensure his silence. Just another night in Adrien Moretti's carefully controlled world. 3 days later, Dr. Porter delivered news that changed everything. Luca is ready to leave the NICU, she announced, her smile wide with genuine pleasure. He's gained enough weight, his feeding is consistent, and all his vitals are perfect. We can transition him to the nursery in your wing. Lena felt tears spring to her eyes. After weeks of isolates and monitors and the clinical distance of medical supervision, she would finally have her son in her arms without barriers. Really? He's strong enough? More than strong enough. He's a miracle, this one. Dr. Porter made notes on her tablet. We'll keep monitoring him, of course. Daily weight checks, developmental assessments. But he doesn't need intensive care anymore. He just needs his mother. Adrien appeared in the doorway as if summoned by the good news. I heard. Congratulations. Thank you. Lena couldn't keep the tremor from her voice. When can we move him? This afternoon, if you'd like. Dr. Porter glanced between them. I'll have the nursery fully equipped with everything you need, and I'll be available 24/7 if any concerns arise. The afternoon passed in a blur of preparations. Catherine helped Lena set up the nursery, showing her the features Adrien had built in. A camera system so she could check on Luca from her phone, blackout curtains for better sleep, a white noise machine calibrated to the exact frequencies that soothed infants. Every detail had been considered. When Dr. Porter finally carried Luca into the nursery and placed him in Lena's arms without any isolette between them, Lena felt something fundamental shift in her chest. This was real. This was her son, and for the first time since his premature birth, he was truly hers. Hi, baby, she whispered, settling into the rocking chair. Welcome home. Adrien stood in the doorway, watching them with an expression that made Lena's defenses crack just slightly. Whatever else he was, criminal, dangerous, ruthless, he loved their son. That much was undeniably true. Thank you, she said quietly, for all of this. The medical care, the nursery, everything. You don't have to thank me. Adrien moved closer, kneeling beside the rocking chair. He's my son too. I'd do anything for him. I know. And she did, which made everything so much more complicated. They sat there together as evening fell, watching Luca sleep in Lena's arms, the setting sun painting the nursery in shades of gold. For just a moment, they looked like a real family. Normal. At peace. But outside the windows, armed guards patrolled the perimeter, and somewhere in the darkness, threats that Lena couldn't see lurked like wolves waiting for weakness. The fragile peace wouldn't last. She knew that with bone-deep certainty. She just didn't know how soon it would shatter. The peace lasted exactly 4 days. Lena woke at 3 a.m. to the sound of alarms shrieking through the compound. Her first instinct was Luca. She bolted from bed and ran to the nursery, finding him awake and startled by the noise but unharmed. She scooped him from the crib just as her door burst open. Marcus stood there in full tactical gear, his expression harder than she'd ever seen it. "Ms. Hart, we need to move you to the safe room, now." "What's happening?" "Armed incursion. Multiple hostiles breached the perimeter." He was already ushering her toward a section of wall that she'd assumed was decorative paneling. Marcus pressed his palm against it and the wall slid open, revealing a reinforced steel door. "Inside, don't come out until Mr. Moretti or I come for you personally." Lena clutched Luca tighter, her heart hammering. "Where's Adrien?" "Handling the situation." Marcus practically pushed her through the door. "Lock it behind me. The code is your son's birthday, month, day, year. Do not open it for anyone else." The door slammed shut, leaving Lena in what appeared to be a fully equipped panic room. LED lights flickered on automatically, revealing a space about the size of a studio apartment. There was a bed, a bathroom, supplies stacked against one wall, and a bank of monitors showing security feeds from around the compound. Lena sank onto the bed, holding Luca against her chest as she stared at the monitors in horror. The feeds showed chaos, muzzle flashes in the darkness, figures in black tactical gear swarming the grounds, Adrien's security team engaging them with coordinated precision. She counted at least a dozen hostiles, maybe more. On one screen, she could see Adrien himself, moving through the compound with a handgun that looked like an extension of his arm. He dropped two men with shots so quick and efficient they barely registered before moving to the next threat. This wasn't the gentle father who read to Luca or the complicated man who'd kissed her in the library. This was the crime boss who'd built an empire on violence, and watching him work was terrifying and mesmerizing in equal measure. The firefight lasted 17 minutes. Lena counted every second, her arms aching from how tightly she held Luca. Her son had started crying from the stress and unfamiliar surroundings, and she bounced him mechanically while her eyes stayed glued to the monitors. She saw Marcus take down 3 men with brutal efficiency, saw Catherine, the house manager who grew herbs and made pasta salad, emerge from a concealed position with a rifle and provide cover fire that would have made a sniper proud. Saw Adrien's entire operation reveal itself as exactly what it was, a military-grade defensive position disguised as a luxury compound. Finally, the shooting stopped. The monitors showed Adrien's team conducting a sweep of the grounds, securing unconscious or dead hostiles, checking for additional threats. Lena counted 8 bodies that weren't moving, maybe more in the areas the cameras couldn't see. 30 minutes after the alarms had first sounded, someone knocked on the safe room door in a pattern. 3 quick raps, pause, 2 more. Then Adrien's voice, rough with adrenaline and exertion. "Lena, it's me, it's over. You can open the door." Her hand shook as she entered the code. The door slid open to reveal Adrien, his shirt torn and splattered with blood that probably wasn't his own. His gray eyes immediately found Luca, scanning for injury with an intensity that bordered on desperation. "Are you hurt?" he demanded. "Either of you?" "We're fine." Scared, but fine. Lena stepped back to let him enter. What the hell just happened? Adrien moved to the monitors, pulling up footage and rewinding. The Volkov Bratva. They weren't as resolved as I thought. This was a coordinated assault, probably their last major play before I dismantle what's left of their operation. He pointed to one screen. They had inside information, knew about the safe room, knew our security rotation. Someone talked. Who? I'll find out. The cold certainty in his voice made Lena shiver. But right now we need to assume there are more threats we haven't identified. The compound isn't safe anymore. Where can we go that's safer than this? Adrien looked at her, and she saw genuine regret in his expression. Nowhere. Which is why I'm changing tactics entirely. Over the next hour, as dawn broke over the compound and cleanup crews worked to remove the evidence of violence, Adrien laid out his plan. They sat in the safe room because it was the most secure location, with Luca sleeping fitfully in Lena's arms and the adrenaline slowly draining from both their systems. I've been trying to protect you by hiding you, Adrien said, but that creates a target, an unknown quantity that my enemies think they can exploit. So instead, we're going to do the opposite. What does that mean? It means I'm going to make you and Luca the most visible, most protected, most untouchable members of my family. Everyone in my world, allies and enemies alike, will know exactly who you are and what touching you costs. He pulled out his phone and showed her a press release. I'm announcing that I have a son, publicly, legitimizing him as my heir and acknowledging you as his mother and someone under my permanent protection. Lena felt cold dread settle in her stomach. You're painting a target on us. I'm making the target so bright that no one will dare take a shot. Adrien's voice carried absolute conviction. Right now, you're a secret weakness. But if you're acknowledged, if every person in this city knows that harming you means war with the Moretti family and every ally I have, you become untouchable. Or we become priority targets for anyone who wants to hurt you. They're already targeting you. Tonight proved that. Adrien gestured to the monitors showing the aftermath outside. The difference is now they'll know the cost. And I'll have legal justification for the protection I'm providing. No more hiding. No more pretending you're just some random woman I'm keeping safe. You'll be Luca's mother. He paused. My partner. In every way that matters. Lena understood what he wasn't saying. This wasn't just about security. This was about claiming her publicly, making a statement that would reshape his entire world. I never wanted this kind of life. I know. And I'm sorry. But after tonight, we're out of options. Adrien reached for Luca, and Lena let him take their son. He held the baby with infinite gentleness despite the blood still staining his shirt. I can't protect him if I'm constantly worried about hidden threats. But if everyone knows he exists, if his presence becomes an established fact rather than a rumor, I can build protection that actually works. What about my life, my career? I can't just become some crime boss's... She stopped, unsure what word to use. Partner, Adrien supplied, and you can keep your career if you want. I'll fund a private practice, or a research position at a teaching hospital. Whatever you want, as long as it comes with the security necessary to keep you safe. You're asking me to give up everything? I'm asking you to choose survival. Adrien's voice gentled. For yourself and for our son. I know it's not fair. I know you deserve better. But this is the reality we're living in. Lena looked at Luca sleeping in his father's arms, at the innocent life that had been created from one reckless night and was now caught in a web of violence and power she'd never wanted to be part of. But Adrien was right. After tonight, there was no going back to the illusion of safety through hiding. If we do this, she said slowly, I need real autonomy. Not the pretend kind where you make all the decisions, and I just agree. Real partnership. You'll have it? And Luca doesn't get raised in this world. He gets a normal childhood as much as possible. Normal school, normal friends. No involvement in your business until he's an adult and can make his own choices. Agreed. Adrien didn't hesitate. I want better for him than what I had. That's the whole point. Then yes, we'll do it your way. Lena stood, moving to the monitors showing the compound. But I need to know, the people who did this, what's going to happen to them? The ones who survived are being interrogated. Once we have the information we need, they'll be turned over to authorities with enough evidence to ensure long prison sentences. Adrien's expression hardened. The ones who didn't survive are a message to anyone else considering similar action. This is what happens when you threaten my family. The casual mention of death should have horrified her. Instead, Lena felt a grim satisfaction. These people had tried to hurt her baby, had terrified them both with an assault that could have ended in tragedy. She couldn't find it in herself to mourn their deaths. Maybe she'd been in Adrien's world too long already. Or maybe motherhood had unlocked something primal in her that understood protection at any cost. The next 72 hours passed in a whirlwind of activity. Adrien's publicity team, apparently he had a publicity team, crafted the perfect announcement. Adrien Moretti, respected businessman and philanthropist, was pleased to announce the birth of his son Luca. The mother, Lena Hart, was a dedicated cardiac nurse he'd met the previous year. They were committed to co-parenting and building a stable family for their child. The press release was masterful in what it revealed and what it concealed. Nothing about Vegas. Nothing about Lena hiding her pregnancy. Nothing about crime families or assassination attempts. Just a simple story of two people navigating modern parenthood with grace and maturity. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Media requests flooded in. Adrien declined them all but arranged for one carefully controlled photo opportunity, a professional photographer who captured images of them with Luca in the compound's garden. Lena wore a dress Catherine had somehow procured in her exact size. Adrien looked every inch the proud father in casual but expensive clothes. Luca was perfect, his dark eyes alert and curious, the Moretti resemblance unmistakable. The photos went viral within hours. Comments ranged from congratulations to speculation about their relationship to conspiracy theories about Adrien's business interests. But the message was clear. Luca Moretti existed. He was acknowledged. And anyone with eyes could see how much his father valued him. 2 days after the announcement, Marcus informed Adrien that the Volkov Bratva's remaining leadership had requested a meeting. They arrived at the compound in the early evening, 3 men in expensive suits with the kind of wary respect reserved for someone who'd just decimated their operation. Adrien met them in the formal dining room with Lena at his side. She'd argued against being present, but Adrien had insisted. This was about establishing the new reality, and that required her visibility. The lead negotiator was a man named Dmitry Volkov, maybe 50, with cold blue eyes and the bearing of someone who'd survived in a brutal world through intelligence rather than just violence. He looked at Lena with barely concealed calculation before focusing on Adrien. "Mr. Moretti, thank you for agreeing to meet." "I don't recall agreeing to anything." Adrien's voice was pleasant, but his posture radiated lethal calm. "You requested. I allowed. There's a difference." "Of course." Dmitry inclined his head. "Then allow me to be direct. The recent misunderstanding was the result of overzealous associates acting without proper authorization. Our organization had no knowledge of the assault on your home." "Bullshit." Adrien's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Your people had inside information. They knew security rotations. They knew about the safe room. That level of intelligence requires organizational support. Perhaps. But it also requires someone providing that intelligence." Dmitry's gaze flickered to Marcus, who stood behind Adrien like a stone sentinel. "Have you considered that your leak might be closer than you think?" The implication hung in the air like poison. Adrien's expression didn't change, but Lena felt the temperature in the room drop several degrees. "Careful," Adrien said softly. "Accusing my people of disloyalty is a fast way to end this conversation permanently. I'm not accusing. I'm suggesting you look inward before you dismantle what remains of our operations." Dmitry pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. "As a gesture of goodwill, this contains everything we know about the attack. Names, communications, payment trails. You'll find we had no involvement beyond providing muscle to someone who claimed to have your authorization for a security test." Adrien opened the folder and scanned the contents. His expression remained neutral, but Lena saw his jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. "Who hired you?" he asked. "That information is in the folder, along with our formal withdrawal from any territorial disputes in the Northeast Corridor." Dmitry stood. "We're not your enemy, Mr. Moretti. We never wanted to be. Someone set us both up. I suggest you find out who." After the Bratva delegation left, Adrien spread the folder's contents across the table. Lena moved closer, looking at the papers covered in names and dates and financial transactions. One name appeared repeatedly, circled in red pen by Dmitry's people. James Chen, Adrien's intelligence chief. "No," Marcus said immediately. "James has been with us for 8 years. His loyalty is absolute." "Apparently not." Adrien's voice was hollow. "This shows payments from an offshore account to James's sister's medical fund. $50,000 a month for the past 6 months, right when we started moving operations to protect Lena and Luca." "His sister has cancer," Marcus protested. "He's been paying her treatment costs out of pocket. Everyone knows that. And someone offered to help with those costs in exchange for information." Adrien closed the folder. "Bring him in, quietly. I want to hear his side before we make any final decisions." James Chen arrived an hour later, clearly confused about the urgent summons. He walked into Adrien's study with the easy confidence of someone who believed himself trusted and valued. That confidence evaporated when he saw the folder on Adrien's desk. "Sir, I can explain." "Can you?" Adrien's voice was deadly quiet. "Can you explain why you've been receiving payments from the same shell corporation that funded tonight's assault? Can you explain why you provided security rotation schedules and safe room locations to people who used that information to try to kill my son?" "I didn't know what they'd do with the information." James's composure cracked. "They said they just needed to know you were taking proper precautions, that they were allies checking your security. I thought—" He stopped, seeming to realize how weak it sounded. "You thought what?" Adrien stood, moving around the desk with predatory grace. That selling information about my family's safety was acceptable as long as the money went to a good cause? My sister is dying. The experimental treatments are her only chance, but they cost $200,000 she doesn't have. I was desperate. James's voice broke. I never meant for anyone to get hurt. I swear on my life, I thought I was just providing routine security assessments. Lena watched the exchange from her position near the window. She could see the anguish in James's face, the genuine horror as he realized what he'd enabled. But she could also see the cold fury in Adrien's expression, the understanding that betrayal, even well-intentioned betrayal, couldn't be tolerated. Your sister will receive full payment for her treatments, Adrien said finally, through a medical fund I'm establishing. She'll have the best care available for as long as she needs it. James's eyes widened with desperate hope. Thank you, sir, thank you, but you're done here. Adrien's voice cut through the gratitude like a blade. You betrayed my family. You endangered my son. I don't care about your reasons. Marcus, make the arrangements. What kind of arrangements? Lena asked, her voice sharp. She moved away from the window. Adrien, what are you going to do to him? Relocate him. New identity, new city, generous severance package on the condition he never returns or speaks about his time in my employ. Adrien looked at James. Consider it mercy, because what you deserve for putting Luca at risk is significantly worse. Relief and shame warred on James's face. Marcus escorted him out, leaving Lena alone with Adrien in the study. The weight of what had just transpired hung heavy in the air. You're just letting him go? She asked. I'm giving him the chance to start over away from this world, which is more than most people in my position would do. Adrien sank into his desk chair, suddenly looking exhausted. But I meant what I said about his sister. She doesn't deserve to suffer because her brother made a desperate choice. Lena moved closer, seeing the toll the night had taken. How do you do this? How do you make these kinds of decisions every day? Practice. And by accepting that there are no perfect choices, only least worst options. Adrien looked up at her. James made a mistake that could have killed our son. But he also spent 8 years loyal to my family, and his motivation was love rather than greed. So I choose mercy. This time. And next time? Next time I make sure the people in my inner circle have no vulnerabilities that can be exploited. No sick relatives. No gambling debts. No secrets that make them susceptible to manipulation. He stood, moving to the window she'd vacated. That's how you survive in this world. By eliminating weaknesses before they can be used against you. That sounds lonely. It is. Adrien's reflection in the window glass looked haunted, which is why having you and Luca matters so much. You're not part of this world. You're not calculating angles or looking for advantages. You're just... He stopped, seeming to search for words. Real. Honest. Everything I've been missing. Lena felt her defenses crack further. She'd been trying so hard to maintain emotional distance, to keep Adrien in the category of co-parent rather than something more complicated. But tonight had shown her the truth. They were bound together by more than just Luca. They were partners in survival, two people navigating an impossible situation and finding something genuine in the wreckage. Adrien. She waited until he turned from the window. What happens next? After this announcement, after the threats are neutralized, what's our life supposed to look like? Whatever we make it. He crossed the study until he stood directly in front of her. I know what I want it to look like, but that requires you being willing to take a chance on someone who comes with a very complicated past and an uncertain future. What do you want? You, us, a real family. Adrien's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheek with infinite gentleness. Not just co-parenting logistics and security protocols, an actual partnership where we're building something together instead of just managing a shared situation. Lena knew she should pull away, should maintain the boundaries that had kept her safe from getting too entangled. But the truth was, those boundaries had been dissolving for weeks. With every shared moment in Luca's nursery, every conversation that went deeper than surface logistics, every glimpse of the man Adrien was trying to become. I'm terrified, she admitted. So am I. Adrien's smile was rueful. I faced armed enemies and federal investigations without breaking a sweat. But the thought of you rejecting what we could have, that terrifies me. We come from completely different worlds. Then we build a new one. For Luca and for us. He leaned his forehead against hers. I can't promise it'll be easy. I can't promise my past won't complicate our future. But I can promise I'll spend every day trying to be worthy of the chance you're giving me. Lena closed the distance between them, kissing him with the full weight of weeks of denial and resistance finally crumbling. Adrien responded immediately, his arms coming around her with a combination of hunger and reverence that made her knees weak. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lena pressed her hand against his chest and felt his racing heart beneath her palm. We do this my way, she said firmly. Slow, careful, with boundaries that protect Luca if things don't work out between us. Whatever you need. And you keep working toward legitimate business. I meant what I said. I want our son to have a father he can be proud of. That means you actually following through on the exit strategy. Already in progress. Adrien kissed her forehead. 5 years maximum. That's my timeline to be completely clean. I'll hold you to that. They stood there in the study as dawn broke over the compound, two people who'd been brought together by chance and violence, and were choosing, against all logic and despite every obstacle, to build something real from the wreckage. 3 months later, Lena stood in the garden, watching Luca take in the world with increasingly alert eyes. At 4 months old, he was thriving, growing strong and curious under the combined attention of his parents and Dr. Porter's continued care. The compound had been rebuilt and fortified after the attack, but it no longer felt like a prison. It felt like home. Adrien appeared beside her, wrapping an arm around her waist and pressing a kiss to her temple. It had become their routine, stolen moments in the garden while Luca napped, discussing everything from his latest developmental milestone to Adrien's progress in restructuring his business operations. I have news, he said. The federal investigation into the Moretti family businesses concluded. No charges. They found everything legitimate. Lena turned to face him. Really? That's incredible. It gets better. I've been approved for the charitable foundation we discussed, the one focusing on medical care for underserved communities. Adrien's smile was genuine and proud. Your idea about funding free cardiac clinics is moving forward. We'll break ground on the first one next month. Adrien, that's... Lena felt tears prick her eyes. That's wonderful. You're really doing it. Building something good. I had the right motivation. He pulled her closer. You and Luca showed me what I was missing. Purpose beyond power. Legacy beyond reputation. I want our son to inherit something worth having. Luca chose that moment to wake up from his nap, his cry echoing through the baby monitor. They went inside together, moving through the routine that had become second nature. Adrien lifting their son from the crib, while Lena prepared a bottle, both of them settling onto the nursery's comfortable couch to feed him together. He looks more like you every day, Lena observed, watching Luca's dark eyes focus on his father's face. Poor kid. He got my jawline, but your eyes. At least he stands a chance at being handsome. Adrien's voice was tender as he held the bottle for Luca. I never thought I could have this. A family, peace, something real instead of just survival. We're still figuring it out, Lena reminded him. This doesn't erase your past or make everything simple. No, but it makes it worthwhile. Adrien looked at her over their son's head. I love you. I know it's complicated and probably too soon to say it, but I do. You gave me something I didn't know I needed. Lena felt her heart skip. They'd been building toward this for months, the careful dance of two people learning to trust each other despite impossible circumstances. But hearing the words spoken aloud made it real in a way that stole her breath. I love you too, she said quietly. Even though you're infuriating and controlling and come with more baggage than any sane person would accept. That's the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me. Adrien's grin was pure happiness. You really know how to make a man feel special. They sat there as afternoon faded to evening, the three of them tangled together in the nursery that had been designed with such careful love. Outside the windows, security teams patrolled and cameras monitored, and all the machinery of protection hummed along invisibly. But inside this room, they were just a family. A year after Luca's birth, Adrien and Lena stood in front of a small gathering. Sophie, doctor, Porter, Catherine, Marcus, and a handful of other people who'd become family through proximity and shared crisis. They exchanged vows in the compound's garden under an arch of white roses, with Luca babbling happily in Sophie's arms as witness to his parents' commitment. It wasn't a traditional path to marriage, but nothing about their relationship had been traditional. For the first time as his wife, Lena. For the first time as his wife, Lena thought about the terrified woman who'd hidden her pregnancy in oversized scrubs and planned to disappear to the Midwest. That woman had been trying to protect her child through running and hiding, but she'd learned a harder truth. Sometimes protection meant standing your ground. Sometimes it meant accepting help from unlikely sources. And sometimes it meant choosing to build a life with the very person you'd spent months trying to escape from. "Ready to start forever?" Adrien murmured against her lips. "With you, always." Lena smiled, meaning it with every fiber of her being. They walked back down the aisle hand in hand, their son reaching for them with chubby baby hands, surrounded by people who'd risked everything to keep them safe. The compound that had once felt like a cage had become a fortress of love, a place where a premature baby had grown strong, where two broken people had learned to trust again, where a family had been built from the ruins of shattered plans and impossible circumstances. It wasn't the life Lena had imagined, but looking at Adrien's face, at Luca's smile, at the future stretching before them full of possibility and hard-won peace, she couldn't imagine wanting anything else. They'd survived the darkness. Now they got to live in the light they'd fought so hard to create, together.